Chapter 1. Make or Break. The heavy oak table in the dimly lit study bore the weight of decades of secrets, and tonight it bore the fate of an empire. 5 men sat in tense silence, the air thick with smoke from smoldering cigars. A single faint bulb swung overhead, casting flickering shadows that mirrored the uncertainty in the room. At the head of the table sat Frank Petrov, the eldest of the group, his hands clasped as though in prayer, his piercing gaze sweeping over the others. "This deal is either our salvation or our doom," Frank intoned, his deep voice steady but edged with weariness. "We either close it now or watch everything we've built turn to ash." A murmur of agreement rippled through the group, though no one dared to speak outright. Carlos Gonzalez, his dark eyes sharp and calculating, adjusted his cufflinks with a deliberate air. Beside him, Michael Russo leaned back in his chair, his artistic temperament betrayed by the restless tapping of his fingers against the polished wood. Liam O'Sullivan, the youngest of the group, fidgeted with the brim of his hat, the bravado of youth cracking under the weight of the moment. Daniel Williams, a phantom presence, was represented only by the empty chair he'd once occupied. The silence stretched, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Finally, Carlos cleared his throat. "We move forward," he said, his tone resolute. "No hesitation. Anything less is weakness." The others nodded, though their unity felt brittle, a veneer over the fractures forming beneath their feet. Michael broke the tension with a low chuckle, though it lacked humour. "Forward into what, exactly?" he asked, leaning forward, his fingers steepled. "We're gambling on whispers and shadows. If we fall alone." Frank's gaze pinned him like a hawk spotting prey. "If we fall together," he corrected, his tone brooking no argument. Michael reluctantly leaned back, muttering under his breath. The clock's steady ticking seemed louder now, marking the seconds until their decision would set their fate in motion. Anna Petrov's perspective. Miles away, Anna Petrov sat in the grand parlour of her estate, her phone glowing faintly on the coffee table. The room, with its gilded mirrors and plush velvet drapes, exuded elegance, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within her. She stared at the cryptic text message that had arrived an hour ago. "Be prepared." 2 words, as ominous as they were vague. Anna's perfectly manicured fingers hovered over the screen. She considered responding, but stopped herself. Whoever had sent it clearly knew more than they were letting on, and pressing for answers might do more harm than good. She placed the phone down, its screen reflecting her furrowed brow. From the adjoining room came the faint clink of silverware. Anna's maid, Lucia, was tidying up after dinner, humming a soft tune under her breath. The sound brought a fleeting sense of normalcy, one Anna clung to for a moment, before her mind returned to the message. Her husband's warning had been curt, but clear: stay out of it. Yet Frank had always underestimated her. She wasn't one to wait idly while the ground shifted beneath her feet. Rising from her chair, she crossed the room to the bar cart, pouring herself a measure of whiskey. The amber liquid swirled as she took a sip, the burn steadying her nerves. She walked to the window, pulling the heavy drapes aside. The vast expanse of her garden stretched before her, bathed in moonlight. Everything seemed calm, serene even, but the text remained on the table, a silent harbinger of chaos. Something was coming, and Anna felt the weight of it settle over her shoulders like a shroud. The wives' perspectives. Elsewhere, similar messages had arrived, sowing unease like seeds scattered on a stormy wind. Maria Gonzalez sat at her desk, the glow of her computer screen highlighting the determined set of her jaw. She had been reviewing the latest financial reports from the family's legitimate businesses when her phone buzzed. The words on the screen sent a chill through her, though she would never admit it. Be prepared. She immediately thought of her son, Roberto. Picking up the phone, she dialed him, relief washing over her when he answered on the second ring. "I'm fine, Mom," Roberto said, his voice tinged with annoyance. "Stop worrying." But she couldn't. Maria's mind raced through contingency plans, her business acumen providing a cold comfort as she began drafting a list of steps to protect her son and their assets. She opened her desk drawer, retrieving a small notebook where she had scribbled her emergency protocols. Her pen scratched furiously against the paper as she reviewed and updated her preparations. Sophia Russo sat in her studio, the scent of oil paint and turpentine sharp in the air. She held a brush in one hand, but the canvas before her remained blank. Her phone lay discarded on the floor, the message glaring up at her. Sophia's heart ached with a familiar mix of longing and dread. Michael had been gone for months, yet his absence was a constant presence, an open wound that refused to heal. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the phone. Be prepared. She had no idea what it meant, but a deep unease settled in her chest. Setting down the brush, she pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders and stared out the window. The city lights blurred through unshed tears, the view as fractured as her thoughts. After a long moment, Sophia set her jaw and stood. If chaos was coming, she would meet it on her terms. She began clearing her studio, stacking brushes and paints with precision. It was a small act, but it gave her a fleeting sense of control in an otherwise chaotic moment. Laura Williams paced the length of her modest apartment, the message still fresh in her mind. Unlike the others, her reaction was not fear but calculation. She pulled a burner phone from her pocket, dialing a number she had memorized but rarely used. "I received it," she said, her voice low and clipped. "Then you know what to do," the voice on the other end replied. Laura hung up without another word. She checked the locks on her windows and doors, her movements precise and practiced. Whatever storm was coming, she would be ready, on her terms. She opened her closet, pulling out a small duffel bag filled with essential supplies. A firearm, ammunition, cash, and multiple IDs lay inside. Laura sat on the edge of her bed, her expression unreadable, as she methodically checked each item. This was not the first time she had prepared for a worst-case scenario, but the stakes felt different now, higher, more personal. A foreboding midnight. The clock struck midnight, its chime echoing ominously through Anna's home. She returned to her seat, glass in hand, and stared once more at the message. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows as if the night itself sensed the impending chaos. In her mind, she replayed the last conversation she'd had with Frank before his departure. His cryptic warnings, his insistence on secrecy, it all pointed to something far greater than she had imagined. "Be prepared," she whispered to herself. Her reflection in the gilded mirror stared back, inscrutable yet resolute. Whatever was coming, she would face it head on. Chapter 2. The Crumbling Empire, Part 1. The early morning sun painted the city in muted tones, but the serene facade was shattered by the chaos erupting within. Sirens wailed through the streets, their piercing cries slicing through the calm like a scalpel. Unmarked vans screeched to a halt outside sprawling mansions, their doors flung open to release armed officers, who moved with precision and purpose. Across the city, a carefully coordinated sting operation was underway, and nothing would remain untouched. Detective Helen Radcliffe stood at the edge of one such scene, her sharp eyes concealed behind dark sunglasses. She exuded an air of calm authority, her tailored suit unruffled despite the frenetic activity around her. Officers swarmed a stately mansion, battering down doors and shouting orders. Inside, the echoes of panic ricocheted off marble walls as the last vestiges of power slipped through trembling hands. "Suspect secured," a junior officer reported, his voice tinged with a mix of awe and nerves. "Liam O'Sullivan's in custody." Radcliffe nodded, her lips curling into a faint smile. "Ensure every inch of that place is searched. No loose ends." The officer hesitated, glancing at the mansion's imposing facade. "And the wife?" Radcliffe's gaze hardened. "Bring her in. They're all part of this." As the officer moved to relay her orders, Radcliffe turned her attention to a nearby news crew setting up their cameras. This was her moment, the culmination of years of painstaking work. She could already see the headlines. Detective Radcliffe brings down mafia empire. Anna's perspective. Anna Petrov sat frozen in her parlour, her fingers clutching the remote as the live news feed played on the television. The footage showed officers swarming her estate, the polished gates that had once symbolized invincibility, now a crumpled heap. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, but her face remained stoic. She had trained herself for this, to never show weakness, even when the world was falling apart. Lucia entered the room, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. "Madam, the police are outside. They haven't entered yet, but—" Anna's voice was calm, almost cold. "Stay where you are. Do not speak to anyone unless I instruct you." She rose from her seat, smoothing the fabric of her dress with meticulous precision. Her mind raced, even as her movements remained measured. Grabbing her phone, she sent a single text to the group chat she had created for emergencies. "Stay quiet. Destroy everything." Setting the phone aside, she turned to Lucia. "You know what to do if they come inside." Lucia's trembling hands betrayed her, but she nodded. "Yes, madam." Satisfied, Anna moved to her study. Her husband's warnings had been cryptic but clear. Be ready for anything. She opened the hidden safe behind a bookshelf, retrieving a folder of documents she had prepared weeks ago. Each piece of paper represented leverage, a shield against the inevitable storm. But as she glanced at the television, showing Michael Russo being dragged from his home in handcuffs, she wondered if even that would be enough. Maria's perspective. Maria Gonzalez's morning routine was interrupted by the urgent buzz of her phone. She grabbed it from her bedside table, her stomach sinking as she read Anna's message. Her fingers trembled as she typed a response. "Understood, be safe." Through the window, she could see the flashing lights of police vehicles reflected against the walls of her bedroom. Rising quickly, she crossed to her closet and pulled out a fireproof box. Inside were cash, documents, and a few carefully chosen mementos, her survival kit, prepared for this exact scenario. "Mom?" Roberto's groggy voice called from the hallway. Maria turned to see her son standing in the doorway, his hair disheveled and eyes bleary with sleep. Forcing a smile, she placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll be fine, mijo, but I need you to listen to me very carefully." She led him to his room, instructing him to pack a small bag with essentials. As he moved to comply, she returned to her office, her sharp mind already crafting contingency plans. She would not allow anyone, not the police, not the media, not even her husband's enemies, to endanger her son. Sophia's perspective. Sophia Russo stood frozen in her studio, her eyes fixed on the television screen. The vibrant hues of her half-finished painting seemed garish and out of place against the grim scenes unfolding on the news. Her husband Michael's face flashed across the screen, his usually composed expression twisted with fury, as officers dragged him away in handcuffs. A sharp knock at the door jolted her from her paralysis. She hesitated, her pulse racing, before cautiously approaching the door. Through the peephole she saw 2 uniformed officers. "Mrs. Russo," one of them called, his tone firm but not unkind. "We need to ask you some questions." Sophia's grip on the doorknob tightened. She glanced over her shoulder at the scattered letters and photographs on her desk. Evidence of Michael's dealings, fragments of a life she had tried to ignore. With trembling hands, she swept them into a drawer and composed herself before opening the door. "Of course, officers," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her chest. "How can I help you?" Laura's perspective. Laura Williams sat in her car, parked a block away from the chaos engulfing one of the mafia's warehouses. She watched through binoculars as agents swarmed the building, her chest tightening with conflicting emotions. On one hand, her mission as an undercover agent was nearing its goal. On the other, she couldn't ignore the pang of guilt as she thought of the women she'd grown close to over the past year. Her phone buzzed with a message from her handler. "Phase 1 complete. Prepare for extraction." Laura sighed, running a hand through her hair. She couldn't leave yet, not when the lives of the wives were on the brink of collapse. She had to make sure they had a fighting chance, even if it meant jeopardizing her cover. Reaching into her glove compartment, she pulled out a small recording device and pressed play. The faint sound of Michael Russo's voice filled the car, incriminating and damning. Laura's lips tightened. She would hold on to this for now. There were bigger pieces to move on the board before she made her final play. The day unravels. The raids continued throughout the day, each operation meticulously planned and executed. By sunset, the city's criminal underworld was in tatters. The evening news declared it the largest mafia takedown in decades, complete with footage of handcuffed men being loaded into vans and evidence being hauled out in crates. But for Anna, Maria, Sophia and Laura, the nightmare was just beginning. As the city celebrated the fall of the empire, they were left to grapple with a singular, haunting truth. Their lives would never be the same again. Chapter 3. The Crumbling Empire Part 2. The city hadn't yet caught its breath from the morning's chaos, but the shock waves of the raids reverberated far beyond the crime scenes. News channels ran continuous coverage, their anchors delivering updates with a grim determination. Social media buzzed with speculation, conspiracy theories spreading like wildfire. Within the confines of their respective worlds, the wives of the fallen mafia leaders were already grappling with the fallout. Anna's perspective. The polished steel of the fireplace poker gleamed in Anna Petrov's hand as she methodically fed documents into the crackling flames. Each piece of paper, bank statements, ledgers, photographs, represented a lifeline, evidence of her family's empire that could not be allowed to survive. Lucia stood nearby, her face pale, holding a small box of items Anna had designated for destruction. "What if they come back?" Lucia asked, her voice trembling. Anna didn't look up from the fire. "They will," she said flatly, "and when they do, there will be nothing for them to find." Her phone buzzed on the mantel, drawing her attention. She snatched it up, her eyes narrowing as she read the text from Maria. "We need to meet. Tonight." Anna's lips tightened. There was no telling what the others were thinking, but she knew one thing for certain. Their survival depended on unity. Dropping the poker with a clang, she turned to Lucia. "Clean this up, I'll be back late." Maria's perspective. Maria's fingers drummed against the edge of the kitchen counter as she stared at the envelope in front of her. It had been slid under her door sometime during the raid, its contents chilling in their simplicity. Inside were copies of emails, her husband's communications with a rival family, details of secret deals she had no knowledge of. Her anger simmered just beneath the surface, but she forced herself to focus. Roberto sat across the room, scrolling through his phone, oblivious to the weight of the moment. She couldn't let him see her crack. "Roberto," she called, "go to your room, I need to make a call." He hesitated but obeyed, leaving her alone with her thoughts. Picking up her phone, she dialed Anna. When the call connected, she didn't waste time on pleasantries. "We need to meet. Tonight. All of us." Anna's voice was calm, almost cold. "I'll arrange it." Maria ended the call and turned back to the envelope, her mind racing. Whatever secrets her husband had kept, they were hers to handle now, and she would handle them, ruthlessly if necessary. Sophia's perspective. Sophia Russo wandered through her studio like a ghost, her mind replaying the morning's events in a relentless loop. The officers had left hours ago, but their presence lingered in the overturned furniture and empty drawers. They hadn't found anything incriminating, not yet, but Sophia knew it was only a matter of time. Her gaze fell on the painting she had abandoned the night before. It was meant to be a landscape, but now the colors felt too vibrant, too alive for the world she inhabited. Without thinking, she picked up a brush and slashed it across the canvas, smearing the paint into chaotic strokes. She worked furiously, her frustration pouring out in every movement, until the vibrant scene was obliterated. The sharp chime of her phone cut through the silence. She hesitated before answering, her hand trembling. "Hello?" "Sophia, it's Anna. We're meeting tonight, my place, 8 o'clock. Sophia's grip tightened on the phone. I'll be there." The line went dead, leaving her alone once more. She set the phone down and stared at the ruined painting, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Whatever tonight's meeting held, she couldn't let herself falter. Laura's perspective. Laura Williams leaned against the counter of a dingy diner, her burner phone clutched tightly in her hand. She had driven halfway across the city after receiving Anna's message, her instincts screaming at her to keep moving. But she couldn't. Not yet. The waitress behind the counter gave her a curious glance but said nothing, refilling Laura's coffee before moving on to the next customer. Laura took a sip, the bitterness grounding her for a moment. She pulled out her notebook, flipping through the coded entries and notes she had compiled over months of undercover work. Phase 1 complete. Prepare for extraction. The message from her handler replayed in her mind, but extraction was the last thing she wanted. She was in too deep, too tied to these women to abandon them now. Her phone buzzed again, this time with Anna's voice on the other end. "Tonight, 8 o'clock. Don't be late." Laura nodded, though Anna couldn't see her. "I'll be there." As the call ended, Laura shoved her notebook back into her bag. Whatever the wives decided tonight, she would be ready to play her part, for better or worse. The gathering. Anna's estate was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt unnatural, as though the house itself was holding its breath. One by one the women arrived, their expressions guarded, their movements cautious. Anna greeted each of them with a nod, leading them to the sitting room where a fire crackled in the hearth. Maria was the first to speak. "We need to figure out who's behind this. The raids, the messages, it's all too coordinated." Sophia folded her arms across her chest. "And what if it's someone close to us? Someone who knows too much?" The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over them like a heavy fog. Laura shifted in her seat, her eyes scanning the others. "We need to stick together. If we start turning on each other, we're finished." Anna's gaze was sharp as she addressed the group. "Then we need a plan. No more waiting for the next blow to fall. We find out who's pulling the strings, and we take control." The women exchanged glances, a reluctant agreement passing between them. In that moment, their shared resolve solidified. Whatever came next, they would face it together, even as doubt and suspicion simmered beneath the surface. As the fire crackled and shadows danced across the walls, the wives began to lay the foundation of their survival, each silently wondering who among them might already be plotting betrayal. Chapter 4. The Blanket. The aftermath of the meeting lingered in Anna Petrov's mind, like the embers of the fire that had burned late into the night. The wives had left one by one, their faces masks of determination and veiled suspicion. Anna knew their tentative unity was fragile at best, a blanket barely covering the fractures beneath. By morning, Anna had already set her plan in motion. She moved briskly through her study, gathering documents, burner phones, and cash from a hidden safe. Lucia hovered in the doorway, her face pale but composed. "Madam, will you need the car prepared?" Lucia asked, her voice steady despite the undercurrent of unease. Anna paused, glancing at the maid. "Not yet, but stay ready. We'll need to be quick if things change." Lucia nodded and retreated, leaving Anna alone with her thoughts. The cryptic messages, the coordinated raids, the uneasy alliances, everything pointed to an enemy that knew too much. The thought sent a chill down her spine. She poured herself a small glass of brandy, the burn steadying her nerves. "Trust no one," she reminded herself. "Not even the women who share your predicament." Maria's perspective. Maria Gonzalez paced the length of her living room, her heels clicking against the polished wood floors. The envelope she'd received the night before still lay on the coffee table, its contents spread out like a grotesque tableau. Emails, photographs, bank records, evidence of her husband's duplicity. Her son Roberto emerged from his room, his face still groggy from sleep. "Mom, what's going on? You're acting weird." Maria forced a smile, quickly gathering the papers into a neat stack. "Nothing, mijo. Just some business I need to take care of." Roberto's brow furrowed, but he didn't press further. He muttered something about breakfast and disappeared into the kitchen. Maria let out a slow breath, her hands trembling slightly as she returned the documents to their envelope. She couldn't let her son see her fear. Not now. Her phone buzzed and she snatched it up. The message was from an unknown number. "The blanket is unraveling." Maria's heart raced as she read the words. Whoever was behind this knew more than she had anticipated. She typed a quick response to Anna. "We need more than a plan. We need protection. Sophia's perspective." Sophia Russo sat at the piano in her living room, her fingers hovering over the keys. She hadn't played in months, but the weight of the morning's silence was unbearable. Her husband's absence echoed in the stillness, a reminder of how much had already been lost. The first notes came hesitantly, then with more confidence as her fingers remembered their old patterns. The music filled the space, its melancholy tones mirroring her mood. She played until her phone buzzed on the bench beside her, breaking the spell. The message was short. "Be ready, midnight." Sophia's hands froze. Midnight? Her heart raced as she considered the implications. Was this another test? Another veiled threat? She quickly replied to the group chat. "What's happening at midnight?" Anna responded almost immediately. "I'll explain later, just be ready." Sophia's hands trembled as she set the phone down. Midnight. The word hung in her mind like a dark promise. Laura's perspective. Laura Williams sat in the corner booth of a small diner, her coffee untouched as she scanned the latest reports on her tablet. The morning news was dominated by stories of the raids, complete with grainy footage of arrests and soundbites from law enforcement officials. Detective Helen Radcliffe's face appeared on the screen, her sharp features exuding confidence as she declared victory in dismantling the mafia's operations. "This is just the beginning," Radcliffe said, her voice calm but resolute. "We will not rest until every thread of this criminal network has been unraveled." Laura's jaw tightened. She knew Radcliffe's type, relentless, obsessive, and willing to bend the rules to achieve her goals. If the wives weren't careful, Radcliffe would tear them apart. Her phone vibrated, drawing her attention. The message was from Anna. "Midnight. My place." Laura typed a quick response. "I'll be there." She locked the screen and leaned back in the booth, her mind racing. Midnight. Whatever Anna had planned, it had to be big and dangerous. The midnight meeting. The clock struck 12 as the women gathered once more at Anna's estate. The sitting room was dimly lit, the flickering fire casting long shadows across their faces. Anna stood at the head of the room, her presence commanding as she addressed the group. "We're being watched," Anna began, her voice steady. "Whoever is behind this knows too much. They're orchestrating this, playing us against each other." Maria leaned forward, her expression fierce. "Then we find them and stop them before they can do more damage." Sophia's voice was softer, hesitant. "What if it's someone close to us, someone we trust?" The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over them. Laura broke the tension. "If we're going to survive this, we need to work together. No more secrets, no more lies." Anna nodded. "Agreed, but trust will only get us so far. We need action. I have a plan, but it's risky. We'll need everyone on board." The women exchanged glances, their agreement unspoken but understood. They had no choice but to move forward, united in their desperation. As Anna outlined her plan, the fire crackled softly, its warmth doing little to dispel the chill that had settled in the room. Midnight marked the beginning of a new phase in their fight, one where the stakes were higher than ever and betrayal loomed at every corner. Chapter 5. Web of Deceit. Detective Helen Radcliffe stared at the evidence board dominating her office wall. Strings of red thread connected photographs, documents, and maps, forming a chaotic tapestry of alliances and betrayals. In the center were the 5 wives, their faces staring back at her like specters. Anna Petrov's image was pinned highest, a crown of power over her empire's remnants. Radcliffe tapped a pen against her notebook, her mind churning. The morning raids had been a success, but they had only scratched the surface. The true power lay with the women who had mastered the art of survival. "Detective," her junior officer called, stepping into the room. "The encrypted messages have been decoded. You'll want to see this." Radcliffe took the file, flipping through the pages. A single phrase repeated across multiple communications. The blanket. She frowned. Have our analysts found out what this means? The officer shook his head. Not yet, but there's more. One of our sources reported unusual activity at Anna Petrov's estate last night. A gathering. No visitors on record, but the security cameras show movement. Radcliffe's lips curved into a faint smile. They're plotting. Good. Let them think they're ahead. It makes them sloppy. Anna's perspective. Anna Petrov stood in her study, her eyes fixed on the diagram spread across her desk. Names, dates, and connections formed a web of deceit she had painstakingly pieced together. At its center was the same phrase that had haunted her since the midnight meeting, the blanket. Her phone buzzed with a message from Maria. Found something. Meeting tonight? Anna replied with a single word. Confirmed. Lucia entered the room carrying a tray of tea. Her movements were precise, her expression unreadable. The documents you requested, madam. Anna nodded, flipping through the files. Each page revealed more about the enemy's reach and strategy, yet the pieces didn't align, leaving a gap she couldn't fill. She set the folder aside, her mind racing. Whoever was orchestrating this chaos wasn't just targeting their empire. They were dismantling their unity. Maria's discovery. Maria Gonzalez sat in her office, the glow of her computer screen illuminating her face. She clicked through the documents she had recovered from a hidden server connected to one of her late husband's shell companies. Buried within layers of legal jargon and financial transactions was a single email. Its subject line stark. Phase 2. She opened the message, her breath catching as she read, Target destabilization complete. Proceed with infiltration. Ensure the blanket holds. Maria frowned, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She typed a quick message to Anna. We need to talk. This goes deeper than we thought. Sophia's encounter. Sophia Russo wandered through a crowded art gallery, her steps light but deliberate. The noise of the crowd was a dull hum in her ears as she scanned the faces around her. Her contact had promised to meet her here, but as the minutes ticked by, doubt crept in. Finally she saw him, a man in a grey suit standing near a sculpture, his posture relaxed. Sophia approached cautiously. You're late, she said, her voice low. He smirked. Patience, Miss Russo. These things require subtlety. Do you have it? She asked, her tone sharp. The man handed her a small envelope. Inside, you'll find details on Radcliffe's surveillance network. Use it wisely. And remember, trust is a luxury you can't afford. Sophia's fingers tightened around the envelope. Who are you working for? He smiled faintly. That's not the right question. Ask yourself who's really pulling the strings. Before she could respond, he disappeared into the crowd, leaving her with more questions than answers. Laura's coded message. Laura Williams sat in her dimly lit apartment, her laptop open to a secure communication channel. A new message had appeared, its sender anonymized. Operation progressing as expected. Maintain cover. Report deviations. Laura leaned back in her chair, her jaw tightening. She typed a response. Targets aware. Coordination increasing. Recommend adjustment. The reply was immediate. No deviations. Proceed. Laura closed her laptop with a snap, her frustration bubbling beneath the surface. The longer she remained undercover, the harder it became to reconcile her mission with the bonds she had formed. She reached for her burner phone and dialed Anna. We need to move, she said without preamble. Radcliffe's closing in. The evening meeting. Anna's estate was shrouded in the soft glow of twilight as the wives gathered once more. The tension in the room was palpable as Anna spread Maria's discovery and Sophia's envelope across the table. Phase 2, Anna said, her voice clipped. Whatever it is, it's designed to destroy us completely. Maria gestured to the email. They've already infiltrated. Someone close to us is feeding them information. Sophia placed the envelope on top of the pile. This is Radcliffe's network. It's extensive, but there are gaps. If we exploit them, we can gain the upper hand. Laura's voice was sharp. Exploiting gaps is useless if we don't know who's behind this. We need names, locations, and leverage. Anna nodded, her gaze sweeping the room. Then we move aggressively. Maria, track their financials, Sophia. Keep your contacts close, but don't trust anyone. Laura, you're our eyes on Radcliffe. We dismantle this web thread by thread. The women exchanged grim looks, their resolve solidifying. As they left the room, Anna lingered by the fire, her mind racing. The blanket. It was more than a code, it was a strategy, and if they didn't unravel it soon, it would suffocate them all. Chapter 6. Veil of Appearances. The tension hung heavy in Anna Petrov's estate as the wives gathered around the grand dining table, each one holding secrets they couldn't yet share. The room was dimly lit, the flickering candlelight casting shifting shadows on their faces. Anna's gaze swept across the group, her commanding presence filling the space. "We've been pushed into a corner," Anna began, her voice steady but sharp. "Radcliffe isn't just dismantling what's left of the Empire. She's turning us into her scapegoats. If we're going to survive, we need to change the narrative." Maria Gonzalez leaned forward, her sharp features illuminated by the light. "And how exactly do we do that? The city is watching, waiting for us to crumble. Radcliffe's playing chess, and we're still learning the rules." Sophia Russo's voice was soft but firm. "Then we need to give them a show, something to distract them, something that puts us back in control." A spark of inspiration flickered in Anna's eyes. "A masquerade ball." Maria frowned. "You're serious?" Anna nodded. "A public display of power and unity. It'll force Radcliffe's hand. She'll come, and when she does, we'll be ready." Laura Williams, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "It's risky. If we misstep, she'll bury us." "It's already a risk," Anna countered. "This is how we take control of the narrative. We hide our moves in plain sight. The masks won't just be decoration, they'll be symbols." Preparations begin. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Anna's estate transformed into a hub of meticulous planning, every detail scrutinized and perfected. Invitations were sent to the city's elite, their gilded edges and cryptic phrasing, creating a buzz that spread like wildfire. Maria took charge of the logistics, her business acumen ensuring that no detail was overlooked. She coordinated with caterers, decorators, and security teams, her efficiency unmatched. Sophia focused on the creative aspects, designing the masks and overseeing the decorations. Her artistic eye brought an ethereal elegance to the event, each element carefully curated to reflect the duality of their lives. Laura worked behind the scenes, analyzing potential threats and tightening security measures. She vetted every guest and staff member, her instincts honed by years of operating in the shadows. Despite the frenetic pace, a sense of unease lingered. Each woman knew the ball was as much a trap as it was a spectacle, and their masks would conceal more than their identities. Maria's warning. Late one evening, Maria stood in the empty ballroom, the polished floors reflecting the soft glow of the chandeliers. She held her phone tightly, her brow furrowed as she reread an anonymous message. "Be careful. The masks won't protect you." Her stomach twisted as she considered the implications. She dialed Anna's number, her voice urgent. "We need to talk. Someone knows about the ball." Anna's response was measured. "Then we make sure they can't use it against us. Double the security. No surprises." Maria's unease didn't fade, but she nodded. "I'll handle it." Sophia's encounter. Sophia wandered through the city's markets, searching for the perfect materials to finish the masks. She paused at a stall displaying intricate fabrics and beads, her fingers brushing against a delicate golden thread. "Beautiful, isn't it?" a voice said behind her. She turned to see a man in a grey suit, his face partially obscured by sunglasses. Her pulse quickened as she recognized him as the contact who had given her the envelope of surveillance details. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice low. "Making sure you're ready," he replied, his tone calm. "Radcliffe's watching you closely. She'll have operatives at the ball. Be careful who you trust." Sophia's fingers tightened around the fabric. "Why are you helping me?" His smile was faint, enigmatic. Let's just say I have a vested interest in seeing Radcliffe fail." Before she could press further, he disappeared into the crowd, leaving her with more questions than answers. Laura's discovery. Back at her apartment, Laura sifted through a stack of dossiers on the invited guests. Each name was tied to a background check, their lives meticulously analyzed for potential connections to Radcliffe. One name stood out, George Stanton, a socialite with a penchant for scandal. His financial records showed a series of unexplained transactions linked to one of Radcliffe's shell companies. Laura's jaw tightened as she noted the patterns. Stanton wasn't just a guest. He was a liability. She dialed Anna immediately. "We have a problem," Laura said, her tone clipped. "Stanton's tied to Radcliffe. If he's coming to the ball, it's not as a friend." Anna's voice was calm. "Then we use him. Keep him close and watch his every move." The night of the ball. The estate glittered like a jewel under the moonlight, its grand facade alive with light and music. Guests arrived in waves, their elaborate masks and gowns transforming the event into a living tableau. The air buzzed with excitement, the allure of mystery drawing everyone into the game. Anna stood at the top of the grand staircase, her crimson gown and jeweled mask making her impossible to ignore. She surveyed the crowd, her eyes sharp and calculating. Every movement, every whispered conversation, was a thread in the web she was spinning. Maria mingled with the guests, her practiced smile hiding the tension coiling in her chest. Sophia moved gracefully through the room, her mask concealing the unease in her eyes. Laura lingered in the shadows, her gaze constantly scanning for threats. The atmosphere was electric, the stakes higher than ever. But beneath the veneer of elegance, the women knew the ball was more than a display of power. It was a battlefield. As the night wore on, Anna descended the staircase, her voice cutting through the noise as she addressed the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate resilience, unity, and the strength to rise above." Applause rippled through the room, but Anna's gaze remained sharp. This was her stage, and she would control the narrative, no matter what shadows lurked beneath the veil of appearances. Chapter 7. The Gathering Storm. The skies over the city mirrored the mood within Anna Petrov's estate, dark, brooding, and heavy with the promise of an impending storm. Inside the grand sitting room the wives gathered once more, their tension palpable. The crackling fire in the hearth did little to dispel the chill of unease that clung to the room. Anna stood by the fireplace, her hands clasped behind her back as she gazed into the flames. "The masquerade is set. Invitations are out. Radcliffe will come. She won't be able to resist." Maria Gonzalez leaned against the arm of a chair, her arms crossed. "And when she does? What then? This isn't just about catching her off guard. She'll be expecting a trap." Sophia Rousseau sat on the edge of the couch, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sleeve. "We're putting everything on the line for this. What if it isn't enough?" "It will be enough," Laura Williams interjected, her tone firm. She leaned against the wall, her eyes scanning the room. "We just have to stay ahead of her, control the board." Anna turned to face them, her presence commanding. "This is our chance to change the narrative. We control the stage, the players, and the outcome, but we have to be united, no cracks, no doubts." Maria's suspicion. Later that evening, Maria paced her bedroom, her thoughts swirling like the storm outside. She couldn't shake the feeling that someone close to them was feeding Radcliffe information. The coordinated raids, the sudden leaks, it all pointed to an insider. She opened her laptop and began combing through the guest list for the ball, cross-referencing names with her own records. One name stood out. Stanton, a wealthy socialite with a history of opportunistic alliances. His financial ties to Radcliffe were subtle, but undeniable. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Stanton isn't the only one watching you." Maria's jaw tightened as she typed a response. "Who are you?" The reply was immediate. "Someone who knows the stakes." "Sophia's isolation." Sophia sat in her studio, the unfinished paintings on her easel staring back at her like accusations. Her art, once an escape, now felt like a mockery of the chaos consuming her life. She picked up a brush, her hand trembling as she hesitated over the canvas. A knock at the door broke her concentration. She crossed the room and opened it to find the man in the grey suit standing there, his expression unreadable. "You again," Sophia said, her voice tinged with frustration. "What do you want?" "To warn you," he replied, stepping inside uninvited. "Radcliffe's not just coming for you. She's coming for everything you care about. If you're not ready, you'll lose more than your reputation." Sophia's hands balled into fists. "And what am I supposed to do with that?" He handed her a slip of paper. "Follow this lead. It might give you an edge, but be careful who you share it with. Trust is a dangerous thing." Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving her alone with more questions than answers. Laura's surveillance. In her apartment, Laura reviewed the latest intelligence reports from her contacts. Surveillance footage of Radcliffe's movements revealed a disturbing pattern. She was tightening her circle, consolidating power, and eliminating threats with ruthless efficiency. Her phone buzzed with a message from Anna. "Any updates?" Laura typed back. "She's preparing for something big. We need to accelerate our timeline." Anna's reply was immediate. "Noted. Stay sharp." Laura closed the laptop and leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. Every instinct told her they were running out of time. Anna's command. At midnight, Anna gathered the wives in her study. The room was dimly lit, the atmosphere heavy with urgency. She placed a folder on the table, its contents spilling out. Maps of the estate, the guest list, and detailed plans for the masquerade. "This is it," Anna said, her voice steady. "Every move we make from now until the ball has to be calculated. No mistakes." Maria pointed to the map. "What about Stanton? If he's working with Radcliffe, he'll be a liability." Anna's gaze hardened. "We keep him close, watch his every move. If he steps out of line, we'll deal with him." Sophia hesitated. "And what if Radcliffe doesn't take the bait?" Laura spoke up, her tone decisive. "She will. She can't resist an opportunity to gloat. We just have to be ready when she does." Anna's gaze swept the room. "Then let's make sure we are. This is our game now." The calm before the storm. As the wives left the study, Anna lingered by the fire, her mind racing. The plan was risky, but it was their only chance to turn the tables. She poured herself a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid swirling as she stared into the flames. "Radcliffe," she thought, her resolve hardening. "You've underestimated us for the last time." Chapter 8. Shattered Reflections. The grand ballroom of Anna Petrov's estate was a masterpiece of opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over polished marble floors, their reflections shimmering like fractured light across the sea of masked faces. The guests moved like whispers, their laughter soft, and their intentions concealed beneath elaborate disguises. For the wives, it was a stage set for confrontation, a night where every glance and every word carried double meanings. Anna stood at the top of the grand staircase, her crimson gown flowing like molten silk. Her mask, adorned with dark jewels, glittered under the chandeliers. She surveyed the crowd below, her sharp eyes scanning for any sign of Radcliffe or her operatives. This was her battlefield, and she intended to control every move. Maria Gonzalez approached her, her silver gown shimmering as she moved. "Everything is in place," Maria murmured. "Security is tight. Stanton's been spotted, and Sophia's keeping an eye on him." Anna nodded. "Good. Let's see if our queen makes her entrance." Sophia's distraction. Sophia Rousseau lingered near the bar, her golden gown catching the light as she sipped a glass of champagne. Her mask, delicate and feathered, concealed the tension etched across her features. Stanton stood a few feet away, his laughter too loud and his movements too deliberate. She watched him carefully, her gaze never straying far. A man in a black mask approached her, his presence unsettling. "Enjoying the evening, Miss Rousseau?" he asked, his tone smooth. Sophia's grip on her glass tightened. "I would be if I didn't feel like I was being watched." The man chuckled. "Everyone's watching tonight. It's a night of revelations, after all." Sophia's eyes narrowed behind her mask. "And who might you be?" He tilted his head. Just someone who enjoys the spectacle. With that, he disappeared into the crowd, leaving Sophia's heart pounding. She turned back to Stanton, her resolve hardening. Whatever game he was playing, she would ensure it didn't go unnoticed. Maria's discovery. Maria moved through the ballroom with practiced ease, her every step calculated. She paused near a cluster of guests, their laughter masking the tension in their conversation. From the corner of her eye, she saw Stanton slip out a side door, his movements deliberate. She followed, her heels clicking softly against the marble. The hallway was dimly lit, its silence amplifying the sound of her breath. Stanton stopped near a service entrance, pulling out his phone. Maria ducked behind a column, straining to hear his whispered conversation. "They're here," Stanton said. "Everything's in place. Just wait for the signal." Maria's stomach twisted. She slipped away, her mind racing. If Stanton was working with Radcliffe, the ball was more dangerous than they'd anticipated. She hurried back to Anna, her heart pounding. "Stanton's compromised," Maria said, her voice low but urgent. "He's coordinating with someone." Anna's jaw tightened. "Then we need to act, quietly, find Laura." Laura's move. Laura Williams lingered near the edge of the ballroom, her black dress and sleek mask making her nearly invisible. Her earpiece crackled as Maria's voice came through. "Stanton's working with Radcliffe. He's planning something." Laura's expression didn't change, but her mind raced. She slipped out of the ballroom, moving through the hallways with practiced stealth. Stanton was her target now, and she wouldn't let him slip away. She found him in a secluded corridor, speaking urgently into his phone. She moved swiftly, grabbing his arm and slamming him against the wall. "Who are you talking to?" she demanded, her voice low but deadly. Stanton's eyes widened behind his mask. "You're making a mistake," he hissed. "No," Laura replied. "You did when you came here tonight." Radcliffe's entrance. The lights flickered, and a hush fell over the ballroom. The sound of heels echoed against the marble as Helen Radcliffe stepped into the room. Her black gown and intricate mask gave her the air of a queen entering her domain. Conversation stilled, and all eyes turned toward her. Anna descended the staircase, her movements regal. "Detective Radcliffe," she said, her voice carrying over the crowd. "What a surprise." Radcliffe smiled faintly. "Mrs. Petrov, I wouldn't miss such a spectacular event." The tension between them was electric, the crowd watching as if they were spectators at a duel. Anna gestured to the room. "Then please enjoy the night. It's a celebration after all." Radcliffe's gaze didn't waver. "Oh, I intend to." The unraveling. As midnight approached, the tension in the room reached a fever pitch. Laura re-entered the ballroom, her expression grim. She moved to Anna's side, whispering urgently. "Stanton won't talk, but he's definitely working with Radcliffe. Something's about to happen." Anna's eyes narrowed. "Then we make the first move." The lights dimmed, and a projector whirred to life. Images and documents appeared on the walls, detailing Radcliffe's corruption and connections to Stanton. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the evidence unfolded before them. Radcliffe's mask of composure cracked for the first time. She turned to Anna, her voice low and sharp. "You think this will stop me?" Anna stepped closer, her voice equally steely. "No, but it's a start." The chaos. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Radcliffe signaled to her operatives, and a scuffle broke out as they tried to seize control of the room. Laura and Maria moved swiftly, intercepting them with calculated precision. Sophia ushered guests to safety, her calm demeanor hiding the panic simmering beneath the surface. Amid the chaos, Radcliffe slipped away, her silhouette vanishing into the shadows. Anna watched her go, her expression unreadable. "She's not done," Maria said, her voice steady despite the turmoil around them. Anna nodded. "Neither are we." Chapter 9, Smoke and Mirrors. The aftermath of the masquerade lingered like smoke in the air, a residue of tension and unfinished battles. Anna Petrov stood in her study, staring at the wall where photographs and documents had been pinned, their connections mapped out like a web of deceit. The faces of her enemies loomed large, but it was the cracks in her own circle that troubled her the most. Her phone buzzed on the desk, drawing her attention. A single text from Maria. "We need to talk. Now." Anna's jaw tightened. Whatever Maria had uncovered, it wouldn't wait. Maria's revelation. Maria paced the length of her living room, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. The file in her hands felt heavier than it should, its contents a dangerous truth she could no longer ignore. When Anna arrived, Maria wasted no time, thrusting the file toward her. "This is what Stanton was hiding," Maria said, her voice sharp. "Financial records, encrypted communications, and this." Anna opened the file, her eyes scanning the documents quickly. A photograph fell out, landing face up on the table. It showed Stanton in a clandestine meeting with Helen Radcliffe, their expressions grim. "It's worse than we thought," Maria continued. "Stanton isn't just a pawn. He's been feeding her information for months." Anna's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then we'll use him to our advantage. If he's still useful, we turn the tables." Maria hesitated. "And if he's not?" Anna's gaze was ice. "Then we cut him loose." Sophia's dilemma. Sophia Russo sat in her studio, the chaotic remnants of her latest painting strewn around her. The vivid colors on the canvas seemed garish now, mocking the turmoil that churned inside her. The slip of paper the man in the gray suit had given her lay on the table, its scrawled message burned into her mind. "Meet me at midnight. Alone." She debated whether to tell the others, but something about the man's words haunted her. Trust was a luxury she could no longer afford, but neither was ignorance. She slipped the paper into her pocket, her decision made. Laura's surveillance. In the dim light of her apartment, Laura Williams sifted through the intelligence she'd gathered from the masquerade. Video feeds, intercepted communications, and photographs revealed a troubling pattern. Radcliffe was consolidating her power, targeting anyone who stood in her way. Her phone buzzed with a message from Rebecca Stanton. "You're running out of time. She's planning something big." Laura stared at the screen, her jaw tightening. She typed a reply. "Then we strike first. The midnight meeting." Sophia arrived at the deserted warehouse, the air cold and damp around her. The man in the grey suit was waiting, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp. "You came," he said, his tone neutral. "You said you had information," Sophia replied, her voice steady despite the tension in her chest. "What is it?" He handed her a folder. "Radcliffe's endgame. She's not just dismantling your world. She's replacing it. And she's using people like Stanton to do it." Sophia opened the folder, her breath catching as she scanned its contents. Names, dates, and plans. A blueprint for destruction. "Why are you giving me this?" she asked, her voice laced with suspicion. "Because taking her down serves my interests too," he said simply. "But be careful. She's always 3 steps ahead." Before Sophia could ask more, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving her alone with the weight of what she'd uncovered. Anna's decision. Back at the estate, the wives convened in Anna's study. The tension in the room was thick as Sophia placed the folder on the table. "This is what Radcliffe's planning," Sophia said. "She's not just after us. She's after everything we built." Maria scanned the documents, her jaw tightening. "She's using Stanton to build her network. If we don't stop this now, it'll be too late." Laura leaned forward, her gaze intense. "Then we hit her where it hurts. We expose Stanton, dismantle her network, and force her out into the open." Anna nodded, her expression resolute. "We play this carefully. One wrong move and she'll bury us. But if we're smart, we can end this." The women exchanged determined glances, their unity solidifying. The game had shifted, and they intended to win. The first strike. As dawn broke, the wives launched their plan. Maria's financial acumen uncovered Stanton's offshore accounts, revealing the depths of his betrayal. Laura coordinated a leak to the media, ensuring his ties to Radcliffe became public knowledge. Sophia reached out to her journalist contact, providing the evidence needed to ignite a scandal. By the end of the day, Stanton's world was unraveling. The headlines were damning, his reputation destroyed. But as the wives watched the fallout from Anna's estate, a new message arrived on her phone. Nice move, but the game isn't over. Anna's lips pressed into a thin line as she showed the message to the others. Radcliffe's not done, and neither are we. Chapter 10. Debt of Silence.
Yeah.
The morning light filtered through the windows of Anna Petrov's estate, casting long shadows across the library where the wives had gathered once again. The air was thick with unspoken tension, the weight of Stanton's betrayal pressing down on them. Anna stood at the head of the table, her hands gripping the back of a chair as she addressed the group. "We've delivered a blow," Anna began, her voice steady but edged with exhaustion. "Stanton's exposure has rattled Radcliffe, but it hasn't stopped her. She's still out there, and she's more dangerous now than ever." Maria Gonzalez leaned forward, her sharp gaze fixed on Anna. "So what's the next move? We can't just wait for her to strike again." Sophia Russo shifted uneasily in her chair. "We've already pushed her into a corner. What if this only makes her more desperate?" Laura Williams' voice cut through the room. "Desperate people make mistakes. We just have to be ready to exploit them." Anna nodded, her gaze sweeping the room. "Then we press harder. No loose ends, no hesitation. We finish this before she has a chance to regroup." Maria's ultimatum. Maria returned to her penthouse that evening, her mind racing with the day's developments. The city lights stretched out before her, a glittering reminder of the power she had once wielded. But tonight the view offered no comfort. She picked up her phone and dialed Roberto, her voice firm when he answered. "I need to know everything," she said without preamble. "No more lies, Roberto. Who else have you been talking to?" Roberto hesitated, his voice wary. "What are you talking about, Mom? I haven't—" "Don't!" Maria interrupted, her tone sharp. "Stanton's betrayal didn't happen in a vacuum. If there's anyone else you've been in contact with, now is the time to tell me." There was a long pause before Roberto sighed. "There's someone. They've been asking questions, but I didn't give them anything. I swear." Maria's grip on the phone tightened. "Give me a name. Now." Sophia's doubts. Sophia wandered through her studio, the paintings on the walls offering no solace. The folder the man in the grey suit had given her lay open on the table, its contents haunting her. Radcliffe's plans were more insidious than she'd imagined, targeting not just the wives, but their families and legacies. She picked up her phone, debating whether to share the information with the others. Trust was fragile, and every revelation risked further fracturing their alliance. But keeping secrets felt like holding her breath underwater, the pressure building with each passing moment. Her phone buzzed with a text from Anna. "We need to talk now." Sophia's chest tightened as she typed a response. On my way, Laura's pursuit. Laura Williams navigated the crowded streets of downtown, her black coat blending into the shadows. She had tracked a lead from Stanton's files to a run-down office building, its flickering neon sign casting an eerie glow. She slipped inside, her footsteps silent as she made her way to the third floor. The office was sparsely furnished, its walls lined with filing cabinets and corkboards covered in photographs and notes. In the center of the room was a desk, its surface cluttered with papers. Laura's eyes narrowed as she spotted a laptop, its screen still glowing. She moved quickly, inserting a USB drive to copy its contents. A sound from the hallway made her freeze. She reached for her gun, her heart pounding as the footsteps grew louder. The door creaked open, and a man stepped inside, his expression shifting to alarm as he saw her. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded.
No.
Laura raised her gun, her voice cold. "Someone you don't want to cross. Sit down." The confrontation. By midnight, the wives had reconvened at Anna's estate. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting long shadows across their tense faces. Laura placed a folder on the table, its contents spilling out, photographs, emails, and plans that painted a grim picture of Radcliffe's next moves. "She's building a new network," Laura said. "Stanton was just the beginning. She's recruiting from the inside, targeting our allies." Maria scanned the documents, her jaw tightening. "She's not just trying to destroy us. She's trying to replace us." Sophia's voice was hesitant. "If she succeeds, we won't just lose what we built. We'll lose everything." Anna's gaze was steely as she addressed the group. "Then we stop her. We cut off her resources, dismantle her alliances, and force her into the open. No more half measures." The women exchanged determined glances, their unity solidifying despite the cracks in their trust. The storm was far from over, but they were ready to face it together. Radcliffe's shadow. In a dimly lit office across the city, Helen Radcliffe reviewed the latest reports from her operatives. Stanton's downfall had been a setback, but it was far from crippling. Her fingers drummed against the desk as she considered her next move. "They're pressing harder," one of her agents reported. "What do you want to do?" Radcliffe's lips curved into a faint smile. "Let them come. The harder they push, the more they reveal. We'll let them think they're winning, until it's too late." She leaned back in her chair, her gaze fixed on the photograph of Anna Petrov pinned to the wall. The game was far from over, and Radcliffe was determined to remain 3 steps ahead. The pact. Back at the estate, Anna poured herself a glass of wine, the liquid dark as blood in the dim light. She turned to the others, her voice calm but resolute. "We've come too far to let her win. Whatever it takes, we finish this." Maria raised her glass. "To survival." Sophia and Laura followed suit, their glasses clinking together in a silent vow. The battle was far from over, but together they would see it through to the end. Chapter 11. Undercover Shadows. The streets of the city shimmered under a thin veil of rain, the wet pavement reflecting neon lights like fragmented memories. Detective Helen Radcliffe walked with purpose, her trench coat pulled tightly against the chill. Her destination was a nondescript coffee shop in the heart of downtown, a place where anonymity reigned. Tonight, she would lay the groundwork for her next move. Inside the shop, the air was thick with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Radcliffe claimed a corner table, her position giving her a clear view of the entrance. A small recorder sat hidden in her handbag, ready to capture every word of the conversation she was about to have. Her contact arrived precisely on time, his appearance as unassuming as the shop itself. He slid into the seat across from her, his eyes darting nervously around the room. "Relax," Radcliffe said, her tone calm but firm. "No one's watching." He swallowed hard, nodding. "You said this was urgent." Radcliffe leaned forward, her gaze piercing. "Tell me everything you know about Anna Petrov's latest moves." Anna's plan. Back at her estate, Anna Petrov stood before a table spread with maps and documents. The wives surrounded her, their expressions a mixture of determination and fatigue. Laura Williams leaned against the wall, her arms crossed, while Maria Gonzalez studied the files with sharp focus. Sophia Russo lingered by the window, her gaze distant. "Radcliffe's closing in," Anna said, her voice cutting through the tension. "But we've uncovered her weak link, her reliance on local informants. If we can sever those ties, she'll be working blind." Laura pushed off the wall, her tone skeptical. "And how do you propose we do that? She's got half the city in her pocket." Anna's lips curved into a faint smile. "Not for long. We hit her informants where it hurts. Their wallets, their families, their reputations. Maria, you'll trace their financials. Sophia, you'll use your contacts to spread misinformation. Laura, you'll handle surveillance." Sophia's gaze flickered to Anna. "And what about you?" "I'll deal with Radcliffe directly," Anna replied, her tone leaving no room for argument. Maria's investigation. Maria sat in her home office, the glow of multiple monitors illuminating her face. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she traced the financial transactions of Radcliffe's known informants. Shell companies, offshore accounts, and suspicious wire transfers formed a tangled web of corruption. Her eyes narrowed as she uncovered a series of payments tied to a prominent businessman who had long been a fixture in the city's social scene. She made a note of his name and picked up her phone, dialing Anna. "I've got a lead," Maria said. "One of her informants is using a charity as a front. If we expose him, it'll send a message to the others." Anna's voice was steady, Good. Make it happen. Sophia's deception. Sophia Russo stepped into an upscale gallery, her presence commanding immediate attention. She moved through the crowd with practiced grace, her golden gown catching the light as she approached a cluster of influential patrons. "Did you hear about the Petrov estate?" she asked, her voice carrying just enough curiosity to spark interest. One of the patrons tilted his head. "What about it?" Sophia leaned in conspiratorially. "Word is there's a new player in town, someone with deep pockets and dangerous connections." The seeds of misinformation planted, Sophia excused herself, her mission complete. By morning whispers would spread, and Radcliffe's network would begin to question its own stability. Laura's surveillance. Laura crouched on the roof of a parking garage, her binoculars trained on a nondescript office building across the street. Through the rain-speckled lens, she watched as one of Radcliffe's informants entered the building. She snapped a series of photos, her movements swift and precise. Her earpiece crackled with Anna's voice. "What do you see?" "He's meeting someone," Laura replied. "Could be a courier. I'll follow him when he leaves." "Be careful," Anna warned. "We can't afford any mistakes." Radcliffe's move. Helen Radcliffe leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled as she listened to her contact's report. Her informants were growing restless, whispers of betrayal beginning to surface. She knew the wives were behind it, their strategy as bold as it was dangerous. "Double the payouts," Radcliffe ordered, "and remind them what happens to those who betray me." Her contact hesitated. "There's more. They're targeting your informants' families. It's escalating." Radcliffe's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then it's time to escalate in return. Prepare the contingency plan. Let's see how far they're willing to go." Anna's reflection. As midnight approached, Anna stood on the balcony of her estate, the rain soaking into her hair as she stared out at the city. The storm within her mirrored the one outside, her mind racing with the weight of their actions. Every move they made brought them closer to victory, but also closer to ruin. Her phone buzzed with a message from Radcliffe. "You think you're in control, but you're not. Let's see how far you'll go." Anna's grip tightened on the phone as she typed her response. "Farther than you can imagine." Chapter 12. Fragile Alliances. The storm outside the city mirrored the tension within Anna Petrov's estate. The grand dining room, once a place of opulence and power, now bore the weight of unease as the wives convened again. The flickering light of a chandelier danced across their faces, casting shadows that mirrored the fractures in their unity. Anna stood at the head of the table, her commanding presence masking the weariness beneath. "Radcliffe's network is unraveling, but it's not enough. She's escalating, and we need to be ready." Maria Gonzalez sat back in her chair, her arms crossed. "And how do you suggest we do that? Every move we make, she counters. She's not just reacting anymore, she's anticipating." Sophia Russo's voice was quieter, hesitant. "If we keep pushing, we might make her desperate. Desperate people are dangerous." Laura Williams's expression was unreadable as she leaned forward. "Desperate people also make mistakes. If we're smart, we can use that." Anna nodded, her gaze sweeping the room. "Then we need to exploit every crack in her armor. Maria, continue following the money. Sophia, keep your contacts on edge. Laura, surveillance remains our best weapon." Maria's gamble. Maria's investigation into Radcliffe's finances led her to an underground charity event, a facade for laundering money through Radcliffe's network. Dressed in an elegant black gown, Maria blended seamlessly with the elite crowd. She approached one of the event organizers, a man whose name she had uncovered in Radcliffe's files. "Lovely event," she said, her tone warm but her gaze sharp. The man's smile faltered under her scrutiny. "We aim to please. And you are?" "Maria Gonzalez," she replied smoothly. "And I think you and I have mutual interests." His eyes narrowed. "I'm not sure what you mean." Maria leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "You're laundering money for Radcliffe, and I'm here to make sure you stop." The man's face paled, but Maria's smile didn't waver. She slipped him a business card. "Call me when you're ready to talk. Trust me, It'll be better than waiting for her to turn on you. Sophia's misstep. Sophia met with her journalist ally in a quiet corner of a bustling cafe. The file she handed him contained misinformation she hoped would destabilize Radcliffe's network. But as she watched him flip through the pages, doubt gnawed at her. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice low. "If this backfires, it'll bring more heat on you." Sophia's hands trembled slightly. "It won't backfire, it can't." Her conviction faltered when she noticed a man in the corner watching them. His casual demeanor did little to mask his intent. Sophia's heart raced as she realized she'd been followed. She rose abruptly, forcing a smile. "I have to go. You know what to do." As she exited the cafe, her phone buzzed with a text. "Careful, Sophia. You're playing with fire." Laura's discovery. Laura sat in a darkened room, her laptop casting a faint glow. She sifted through surveillance footage from a safe house she'd identified as one of Radcliffe's key locations. Hours of monotonous footage yielded little, until she spotted a familiar face. And one of Radcliffe's operatives was meeting with someone Laura recognized, Rebecca Stanton, Anna's former confidant. Laura's jaw tightened as she rewound the footage, her mind racing. If Stanton was working with Radcliffe, their entire operation was compromised. She copied the footage to a drive and picked up her phone. "Anna," she said when the call connected, "we have a problem. A big one." The confrontation. The wives gathered again in Anna's study, the atmosphere charged with urgency. Laura placed the footage on the table, the grainy images of Rebecca Stanton playing on the screen. "She's working with Radcliffe," Laura said bluntly. "Everything we've done could be compromised." Maria's fists clenched. "I knew she couldn't be trusted." Sophia's voice was hesitant. "Are we sure? Maybe there's another explanation." Anna's expression was unreadable as she watched the footage. When it ended, she leaned back in her chair, her fingers steepled. "It doesn't matter why she's doing it. What matters is stopping her." Laura nodded. "I'll track her movements, find out where she's meeting Radcliffe next." Anna's gaze was steely. "Good. And when you do, we'll make sure she never betrays us again." Radcliffe's countermove. Helen Radcliffe sat in a dimly lit office, her eyes scanning a report from one of her operatives. The wives were closing in, but Radcliffe was already several moves ahead. "Increase the pressure," she ordered. "Target their allies, their families. Make them question everyone they trust." Her operative hesitated. "And Stanton?" Radcliffe's lips curved into a cold smile. "Keep her close. She's useful. For now." The fracture. As the storm raged outside, the wives remained in Anna's study, their fragile alliance showing signs of strain. Maria's suspicions, Sophia's missteps, and Laura's discovery had created cracks that even Anna's leadership couldn't fully mend. "If we don't stick together," Anna said, her voice firm, "Radcliffe wins, and none of us can afford that." The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over them. For now, their unity held. But as the storm outside grew fiercer, so too did the storm within. Chapter 13, Tangled Webs. The storm that battered the city was nothing compared to the tempest brewing within Anna Petrov's estate. The wives gathered in the grand study, the weight of their individual burdens making the air heavy. Each woman held pieces of the puzzle, but together they faced an increasingly complex web of lies, alliances, and betrayal. Anna stood at the head of the room, her presence commanding despite the dark circles under her eyes. She placed a file on the table, its contents spilling out: surveillance photos, financial records, and intercepted messages. Each document painted a grim picture of Radcliffe's expanding reach. "Radcliffe isn't just reacting anymore," Anna said, her voice firm. "She's building something bigger than what we've seen before." Maria Gonzalez leaned back in her chair, her expression sharp. "And we're sitting here trying to catch up. Every move we make, she's already countered." Sophia Russo's gaze flickered between the documents, her fingers tapping nervously against the table. "If she's consolidating power, we need to find her foundation and break it. Otherwise, we'll never get ahead." Laura Williams' voice was measured but edged with urgency. "We have a lead on Stanton. If we follow it, we might be able to identify her inner circle." Anna nodded. "Then that's our focus. Stanton is the key to unraveling her web. If we can turn him, or at least use him, we gain the upper hand." Maria's maneuver. Maria sat in a high-end cafe downtown, her demeanor calm but her senses on high alert. Across from her sat a man in a tailored suit, his polished appearance masking the nervous energy radiating from him. He was one of Stanton's associates, and Maria had orchestrated this meeting to extract information. "You understand the risks of working with Radcliffe," Maria said, her tone smooth but firm. "She uses people like pawns, and when they've outlived their usefulness, she discards them." The man's jaw tightened. "And what are you offering?" Maria leaned in slightly, her voice dropping to a whisper. "A way out, protection, and if you cooperate, a chance to come out of this clean." The man hesitated, his eyes darting around the room. Finally he nodded. "What do you need?" Maria's lips curved into a faint smile. "Everything you know about Stanton, where he's meeting Radcliffe, who he's working with. Give me that, and you'll have my guarantee." Sophia's revelation. Sophia walked through the halls of her gallery, the familiar scent of paint and varnish doing little to calm her nerves. She held a small envelope the man in the grey suit had delivered earlier. Inside were photographs, images of her, Roberto, and other key players. She spread the photos across her desk, her heart sinking as she realized the depth of Radcliffe's surveillance. One image in particular caught her eye. Radcliffe meeting with someone Sophia recognized from her past, an art dealer who had once worked with Michael. Her chest tightened as memories flooded back. The dealer had been connected to Michael's darkest dealings, ties she had desperately tried to forget. Now, those ties were threatening to resurface. Sophia's phone buzzed with a message from Anna. "Meeting tonight. Bring everything." Sophia's hands trembled as she gathered the photographs. She wasn't sure how much more she could reveal without losing the fragile trust of the group. Laura's interception. Laura crouched in the shadows of a parking garage, her eyes fixed on Stanton's car. He had been moving erratically, meeting with various contacts and changing locations frequently. Tonight, he had parked in the basement of a luxury hotel, and Laura was determined to find out why. Through her binoculars, she watched as Stanton exited his car and greeted a tall woman in a dark coat. They exchanged a brief conversation before disappearing into the elevator. Laura's heart raced as she snapped photos of the interaction. She tapped her earpiece. "Anna, Stanton's meeting someone at the Pearl Hotel. I'll follow them." Anna's voice crackled in response. "Be careful, don't engage unless absolutely necessary." The meeting. By nightfall the wives gathered in Anna's study, the tension palpable. Laura placed her photos on the table, each one revealing Stanton's movements and his interactions with Radcliffe's network. "He's funneling information directly to her," Laura said. "And he's meeting with people outside her usual circle. She's expanding." Maria added her findings, detailing the financial ties that connected Stanton to Radcliffe's new ventures. "She's setting up shell companies and shifting assets. If we hit these, we cut off her funding." Sophia hesitated before placing the photographs from the grey-suited man on the table. "She's been watching all of us. This isn't just about the Empire, it's personal." Anna's gaze darkened as she studied the photographs. "Then we make it personal. Stanton's our way in. We flip him, or we neutralize him." Radcliffe's counter. In her dimly lit office, Helen Radcliffe leaned back in her chair, reviewing the latest reports from her operatives. The wives were closing in, but Radcliffe knew the power of misdirection. "Let them think they're winning," Radcliffe said to her lieutenant. "The closer they get, the harder they'll fall. Prepare the contingency plan." The lieutenant hesitated. "And Stanton?" Radcliffe's smile was cold. "Let him squirm. He'll lead them straight to me, just like we planned." The tipping point. As the storm raged outside, the wives sat in silence, each grappling with the weight of their choices. Anna broke the silence, her voice steady. "This ends soon. We dismantle her network one piece at a time, no hesitation." Maria raised her glass. "To the endgame." The others followed suit, their resolve unshaken despite the growing danger. The web around them was tightening, but together they were determined to untangle it, even if it meant risking everything. Chapter 14, Catalyst. The storm clouds over the city had cleared by morning, but the tension inside Anna Petrov's estate remained thick as ever. The wives gathered in the grand library, their faces grim and their movements deliberate. The stakes had never been higher, and each of them felt the weight of their choices. Anna stood at the center of the room, a commanding presence as always. She pointed to the array of documents spread across the large oak table. "Radcliffe's network is vast, but we've identified her pressure points. It's time we exploit them." Maria Gonzalez nodded, her sharp eyes scanning the table. "I've got leverage on 2 of her key operatives. If we move fast, we can turn them." Sophia Russo leaned forward, her voice measured. "And if they don't flip?" Maria's lips curved into a faint smile. "Then they're liabilities we eliminate." Laura Williams crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. "What about Stanton? He's still our best chance to disrupt her inner circle." Anna's gaze hardened. "We move on Stanton tonight. He'll either cooperate or face the consequences." Maria's pressure. Later that afternoon, Maria sat in a sleek car parked outside a private club. Her target, a man named Victor Laskin, was one of Radcliffe's financial operatives. Maria had spent weeks tracing his transactions, building a dossier that could destroy him. Victor emerged from the club, his tailored suit immaculate, but his steps hesitant. Maria stepped out of the car, her heels clicking against the pavement as she approached him. "Victor," she said, her tone calm but authoritative, "we need to talk." He froze, his eyes darting around. "I don't know who you are, but—" Maria cut him off, holding up a folder. "You're going to listen, because if you don't, the next person who sees this will be the prosecutor." Victor's face paled. He took the folder, his hands trembling as he flipped through its contents. Maria stepped closer, her voice low. "You've been loyal to Radcliffe, but she won't protect you when things fall apart. Work with us, and you'll survive this. Otherwise—" She let the silence hang, its weight more threatening than words. Victor nodded slowly, fear etched into his features. "What do you want me to do?" Sophia's interruption. Sophia stood in her gallery, her movements restless as she rearranged a display of her latest work. The man in the grey suit entered quietly, his presence immediately unsettling. "You're playing a dangerous game, Sophia," he said, his tone neutral. Sophia turned to face him, her eyes narrowing. "And you're still speaking in riddles. What do you want?" He handed her a slip of paper. "This is where Radcliffe will be tomorrow night. If you're serious about stopping her, you'll act." Sophia glanced at the address, her heart racing. "Why are you helping me?" The man's expression remained unreadable. "Let's just say I believe in balance, and right now she's tipped the scales too far." Before she could ask more, he disappeared into the shadows, leaving her with the information and a growing sense of dread. Laura's discovery. In her apartment, Laura sifted through surveillance footage and reports, her eyes scanning for anything that would give them an edge. One detail caught her attention: a shipment arriving at a warehouse Radcliffe controlled. It was marked as private cargo, but its origin and destination raised red flags. She called Anna immediately. "Radcliffe's moving something big, a shipment to one of her secondary safe houses. If we intercept it, we'll force her hand." Anna's response was swift. "Send me the details, we'll hit it tonight." The interception. Night fell as the wives converged near the warehouse. Laura coordinated the operation from a nearby van, her voice steady over the comms. "Maria, you're on the entry point. Sophia, hold position until we clear the perimeter." Maria slipped through the shadows, her movements silent as she picked the lock on the warehouse door. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of oil and metal. Crates were stacked high, and the sound of voices echoed from deeper within. "2 guards," Maria whispered into her earpiece. "I'll handle it." Sophia waited outside, her pulse quickening as she scanned the area. Suddenly headlights approached, and she ducked behind a stack of crates. Radcliffe's operatives had arrived. "We have company," Sophia murmured. "Laura, what's the plan?" Laura's voice was calm but firm. "Stick to the objective. We're taking that shipment." Radcliffe's counter. Inside the warehouse, Maria and Anna worked quickly, prying open crates to reveal their contents. Weapons and forged documents, tools of Radcliffe's expanding network. "This is it," Anna said, her voice low. "We take this and we cripple her." Sophia's voice crackled through the comms. "The operatives are heading your way. You need to move." Anna and Maria grabbed what they could, slipping out just as the operatives entered. A brief scuffle ensued, but Laura's precise coordination ensured their escape. As they sped away, the weight of their victory was tempered by the knowledge that Radcliffe would retaliate. The aftermath. Back at the estate, the wives regrouped, their spoils spread across the table. The shipment had given them a crucial advantage, but it had also painted an even larger target on their backs. "She'll come for us now," Maria said, her voice steady. "Harder than before." Anna's gaze was steely. "Let her, we're ready." Sophia studied the documents, her brow furrowing. "There's something here. Addresses, safe houses we didn't know about. If we act fast, we can hit them before she realizes what we've taken." Laura nodded. "Then we don't waste time. Tomorrow we strike again." As the night deepened, the women prepared for what lay ahead. The game was accelerating, and the next move would be theirs. Chapter 15. Shifting Loyalties. The tension in Anna Petrov's estate was a living thing, curling around every conversation and shadowing every glance. The wives gathered in the study again, the spoils from their recent raid spread across the long table. Documents, weapons, and false identities lay in stark contrast to the opulence of their surroundings. Each item told a story, a glimpse into Helen Radcliffe's relentless ambition. Anna stood at the head of the table, her presence as commanding as ever. The shipment was a success, but it's only the beginning. Radcliffe will know we've hit her, and she won't hesitate to retaliate. Maria Gonzalez tapped a folder on the table. "These safe house locations are gold. If we can dismantle her operations there, we cripple her ability to regroup." Sophia Russo's voice was quieter, but no less determined. "And what about Stanton? He's still out there, and he'll lead her straight to us if he hasn't already." Laura Williams leaned forward, her gaze sharp. "Then we make him talk. We're out of time for subtlety." Anna nodded. "Tonight we move on Stanton, but first we focus on these safe houses. If we strike quickly, we keep her off balance." Maria's confrontation. Maria arrived at the first safe house just after dusk, her movements precise as she scoped the perimeter. It was a small, unassuming building in a quiet part of the city, but the guards stationed outside confirmed its importance. Maria slipped through the shadows, her heart pounding as she approached the rear entrance. With practiced efficiency, she picked the lock and entered, her silenced weapon drawn. Inside she found stacks of cash and documents, along with a handful of operatives huddled over a table. They didn't see her until it was too late. Maria's voice was cold as she leveled her weapon. "Hands up now." The men froze, their expressions a mixture of fear and defiance. One of them, a wiry man with a scar across his cheek, stepped forward. "You won't get away with this. Radcliffe will—" Maria cut him off. "Radcliffe's not here, I am. Now start talking or this gets messy." Sophia's doubts. Back at the estate, Sophia paced the length of her studio, her mind racing. The photographs and documents they had recovered from the raid sat on her desk, a stark reminder of the stakes. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You're in over your head. Walk away while you still can." Sophia's hands trembled as she stared at the message. She knew it was a threat, but the voice in her head whispered that it might also be a warning. Her gaze fell on the folder the man in the grey suit had given her. Among the papers was a single sheet, with her name circled in red, a chilling reminder that Radcliffe's reach was personal. Laura's interrogation. Laura found Stanton at a seedy bar on the edge of the city, his disheveled appearance a far cry from the polished socialite he had once been. She cornered him in the alley behind the bar, her gun drawn and her voice low but firm. "You've got one chance to tell me what I need to know," she said. "Where's Radcliffe's next move coming from?" Stanton's eyes darted around, searching for an escape. "I don't know what you're talking about." Laura stepped closer, pressing the barrel of the gun against his chest. "You're a terrible liar, Stanton. Start talking, or I'll make sure Radcliffe doesn't have a chance to save you." Sweat beaded on Stanton's forehead as he caved. "She's planning a major move, a hit on one of your key allies. She thinks it'll break your network." Laura's eyes narrowed. "Who?" Stanton hesitated, then whispered a name that sent a chill through Laura. She stepped back, her mind already racing. Anna's gambit. As the wives regrouped at the estate, Laura relayed what she had learned. The target of Radcliffe's planned attack was one of Anna's closest confidants, a key player in their efforts to dismantle Radcliffe's empire. "She's trying to break us," Laura said. "If she takes him out, it'll send a message to everyone who's aligned with us." Anna's expression was unreadable as she considered their next move. "Then we make sure she doesn't succeed. We protect our ally and turn this against her." Maria's voice was steady. "And Stanton?" "Keep him close," Anna said. "He's a liability, but he's also leverage. For now." Radcliffe's warning. In her dimly lit office, Helen Radcliffe reviewed the latest reports with a satisfied smile. Her operatives had confirmed the wives' movements, and her trap was set. She picked up her phone, sending a single message to Anna. "Checkmate comes soon. Are you ready to lose?" The alliance tested. The wives sat in silence, the storm outside matching the turmoil within. Anna finally broke the quiet, her voice firm. "We're closer than ever to ending this, but we can't afford any more mistakes." Sophia's gaze was distant as she nodded, the weight of her secrets pressing down on her. Maria and Laura exchanged a glance, their resolve unshaken despite the growing danger. As the night deepened, the wives prepared for the battle ahead. Loyalties would be tested and sacrifices would be made. But one thing was certain: they would not go down without a fight. Chapter 16. Beneath the Surface. The rain had stopped by dawn, leaving the city shrouded in a pale grey mist. At Anna Petrov's estate, the air inside the study was just as heavy. The wives sat around the table, their exhaustion evident but their resolve unbroken. Radcliffe's message from the night before hung over them like a storm cloud, a reminder of the relentless pressure they faced. Anna stood at the head of the table, her expression cold and calculated. "Radcliffe thinks she has us cornered, but she's underestimated what we're willing to do." Maria Gonzalez leaned forward, her voice sharp. "Stanton gave us enough to disrupt her plans, but it's not enough to finish her. We need to strike at her core." Sophia Russo's gaze was distant as she tapped her fingers against the table. "If we push too hard, we risk exposing ourselves even more. She's already watching us closely." Laura Williams' tone was blunt. "Then we make her watch the wrong moves. We control the narrative, feed her the story we want her to believe." Anna nodded, her sharp gaze sweeping the room. "We play this carefully. Maria, keep the pressure on her finances. Laura, I want eyes on her every move. And Sophia." She paused, her tone softening slightly. "We need you to leverage your contacts. Find out who's feeding her information on us." Sophia's eyes flicked to Anna, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face before she nodded. "I'll handle it." Maria's pursuit. Maria worked tirelessly in her office, her monitors glowing with spreadsheets and transaction logs. She had spent hours tracing Radcliffe's financial network, following the threads of offshore accounts and shell corporations. Her persistence paid off when she uncovered a significant transfer linked to one of Radcliffe's key operatives. The funds were routed through a small, unassuming bank in Luxembourg, but their destination raised alarm bells, a private account tied to a known arms dealer. Maria picked up her phone and dialed Anna. "I've got a lead. Radcliffe's funding something big. We need to act now." Sophia's encounter, Sophia's search for Radcliffe's informants, led her to a quiet park on the outskirts of the city. She sat on a bench, her posture relaxed, but her senses on high alert. Across from her, an older man in a worn coat approached, his movements hesitant. "You have information?" Sophia asked, her voice calm but firm. The man nodded, his eyes darting nervously. "Radcliffe's been pressuring people, threatening families. She's targeting anyone connected to your group." Sophia's chest tightened, but she maintained her composure. "And who's feeding her the details?" The man hesitated, then handed her a slip of paper. "This is all I know. Be careful. She's always one step ahead." Sophia unfolded the paper, her breath catching as she read the name scrawled across it. It was someone she knew, someone close. Laura's surveillance. From her vantage point in a nondescript van, Laura monitored a bustling downtown office building. Her binoculars followed Radcliffe's lieutenant, a sharp-dressed woman whose every move screamed precision and authority. "She's heading inside," Laura said into her comms. "I'm going in." "Be careful," Anna's voice crackled through the earpiece. Laura slipped inside, blending seamlessly with the lunchtime crowd. She kept her distance as she followed the lieutenant to a conference room on the top floor. Positioning herself outside the door, Laura activated a small recording device, her heart pounding as she caught snippets of conversation. "The shipment. Delay it until we have confirmation. Petrov's group is too close." Laura's pulse quickened. She had what they needed, but leaving undetected would be another challenge. The confrontation. By evening the wives regrouped at the estate. Sophia placed the slip of paper on the table, her hand trembling slightly. "This is who's been feeding Radcliffe information." Maria's eyes narrowed as she read the name. "I knew it. I never trusted them." Laura added her findings, the recording playing softly in the background. "She's stalling shipments and consolidating her power. If we move fast, we can intercept her next operation." Anna's expression was unreadable as she studied the evidence. Finally she spoke. "We act now, no hesitation. If we're going to finish this, we need to be ruthless." Radcliffe's Gambit. In her dimly lit office, Helen Radcliffe reviewed a series of reports with a satisfied smile. Her operatives had confirmed the wives' movements, and her plans were already in motion. "They think they're closing in," Radcliffe said to her lieutenant. "But they're walking into a trap. Let them come." Her lieutenant hesitated. "And if they succeed?" Radcliffe's smile hardened. "They won't. By the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late." The reckoning. As the wives prepared for their next move, the weight of their decisions settled heavily over them. Trust was thin, and the line between ally and enemy blurred more with each passing day. Anna poured herself a glass of whiskey, her gaze distant as she addressed the group. "This is the point of no return," she said. "Whatever happens next, we see it through, together." Maria raised her glass. "To the end." Sophia and Laura followed suit, their glasses clinking in a silent vow. The battle lines were drawn, and the final moves were about to begin. Chapter 17. Crossroads. The night had fallen, wrapping the city in an eerie silence. Inside Anna Petrov's estate, the atmosphere was anything but calm. The wives gathered in the dimly lit study, the tension between them so thick it seemed to warp the air. Anna stood at the head of the room, her hands gripping the back of a chair as she addressed the group. "We've come too far to falter now. Radcliffe's next move is imminent, and we're the only ones standing in her way." Maria Gonzalez leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed. "The information we've gathered points to a critical shipment she's moving tomorrow night. If we hit it, we cripple her network for good." Sophia Russo's voice was hesitant. "But what if it's another trap? She's always one step ahead. We could be walking into her hands." Laura Williams shook her head, her tone firm. "It's a risk we have to take. Radcliffe won't stop until she's taken everything from us. We either act now, or we lose everything." Anna's gaze swept the room. "Then it's settled. We intercept the shipment, but we move carefully. No mistakes." Maria's lead. Maria worked late into the night, her monitors glowing as she traced Radcliffe's financial transactions. The shipment's manifest had been cleverly disguised, but Maria's persistence paid off. She discovered it was being routed through a rarely used dock on the city's outskirts. She picked up her phone and called Anna. "It's all here. The shipment includes weapons, documents, and cash. Everything Radcliffe needs to solidify her power. If we take it, we cripple her." Anna's voice was steady. "Good work. Coordinate with Laura. Make sure everything is ready." Sophia's revelation. Sophia sat in her studio, the weight of the name she had uncovered earlier pressing heavily on her. The paper with the informant's name lay on the table, a glaring reminder of the betrayal within their ranks. Her heart ached as she thought of what it would mean for the group. She picked up her phone and hesitated before texting Anna. "We need to talk. It's important." Anna's response was immediate. "Come to the study now." Sophia slipped the paper into her pocket and made her way to the study. Anna was waiting, her expression unreadable. "What is it?" Anna asked. Sophia hesitated before handing her the paper. "I found this. Someone close to us has been feeding Radcliffe information." Anna's eyes darkened as she read the name. "If this is true, we deal with it, but we can't let this distract us from the shipment." Sophia nodded, though the tension in her chest didn't ease. "I'll handle it, quietly." Laura's preparations. Laura stood in the safe house, her team assembling weapons and gear for the operation. She moved through the room with precision, double-checking every detail. Her phone buzzed with a message from Anna. Sophia found something. Be ready for anything. Laura's jaw tightened. She had no room for surprises, not with everything riding on the next move. She called Maria, her tone brisk. "Are we set on the dock's layout?" Laura asked. Maria's voice crackled through the line. "Everything's mapped. We'll have the element of surprise." Laura's gaze hardened. "Let's make sure it stays that way." Radcliffe's counter-move. In her office, Helen Radcliffe reviewed her own plans with meticulous care. Her operatives had confirmed the wives' interest in the shipment, and she intended to use it to her advantage. "Position our people at the docks," Radcliffe instructed her lieutenant. "Let them think they've won, then cut them down. We'll end this tonight." Her lieutenant hesitated. "And if they don't take the bait?" Radcliffe's smile was cold. "They will. They have no choice." The dock operation. The air at the docks was cold and damp as the wives and their team moved into position. Shadows stretched long under the harsh glow of industrial lights. Maria monitored the perimeter while Laura coordinated the assault team. Sophia lingered at the edge, her thoughts a storm of doubt and resolve. Anna's voice cut through the comms. "Everyone in position? We move on my signal." From their vantage point, they spotted the shipment being loaded onto a truck. Operatives moved efficiently, unaware of the trap closing around them. "Now," Anna ordered. Chaos erupted as the team descended on the dock. Shots rang out, and shouts echoed across the water. Maria and Laura moved with precision, disabling the operatives and securing the shipment. Sophia provided cover, her hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. Radcliffe's operatives were well trained, but the wives' meticulous planning paid off. Within minutes, the dock was under their control. The aftermath. Back at the estate, the wives regrouped, their victory tempered by exhaustion. The shipment lay secured in the study, its contents a trove of incriminating evidence against Radcliffe. Maria poured herself a glass of wine, her hand steady despite the day's events. "We hit her hard tonight, but she'll come back twice as strong." Anna's gaze was steely as she examined the documents. "Let her. We have what we need to dismantle her network piece by piece." Sophia's voice was quiet. "And the informant?" Anna's expression darkened. "We deal with them. No hesitation." Laura nodded, her voice resolute. "One step at a time. We're not done yet." As the night deepened, the wives prepared for the battles yet to come. Radcliffe was wounded, but far from defeated. The crossroads they faced would determine not just their survival, but the future of everything they had fought to protect. Chapter 18. Fragments of Truth. The glow of dawn crept over the city, pale light spilling into Anna Petrov's study where the wives gathered once again. The aftermath of the dock operation lingered like an invisible haze, heavy with exhaustion and the unspoken knowledge that their fight was far from over. On the table before them, the spoils of their raid lay spread out: documents, weapons, and a small black ledger that seemed to hold the answers they needed. Anna stood at the head of the table, her fingers resting lightly on the ledger. "This is what we've been waiting for. Names, accounts, operations, Radcliffe's network laid bare." Maria Gonzalez leaned forward, her sharp gaze fixed on the ledger. "It's enough to dismantle her, but it'll take time to act on all of this, and time is one thing we don't have." Sophia Russo's voice was quieter, cautious. "Radcliffe will know we have this. She'll move fast to cover her tracks." Laura Williams's tone was firm. "Then we hit her before she has the chance. We pick the key pieces and take them out now." Anna nodded, her gaze sweeping the room. "Maria, prioritize the financial leads. Laura, keep surveillance on Radcliffe and her operatives. Sophia—" She paused, her expression softening. "I need you to keep pressing your contacts. Anything that gives us an edge." Sophia hesitated, then nodded. "I'll do what I can." Maria's breakthrough. Maria worked tirelessly in her home office, her monitors glowing as she sifted through the ledger's entries. One name caught her attention: Dominic Harrington, a key financier for Radcliffe's operations. His name was tied to several offshore accounts, each linked to critical parts of Radcliffe's network. Maria picked up her phone and dialed Anna. "I've got something. Harrington's accounts are tied to weapon shipments and bribery payments. If we freeze them, we cut off a significant part of her funding." Anna's voice was steady. "Do it, but make sure it can't be traced back to us." Sophia's encounter. Sophia wandered through an upscale gallery, her eyes scanning the crowd as she searched for her contact. The man in the grey suit appeared beside her, his presence as unsettling as ever. "You've been busy," he said, his tone neutral. Sophia glanced at him, her voice calm but edged with tension. "What do you want?" He handed her a small envelope. "A warning. Radcliffe knows you've been digging. She's watching your every move." Sophia's heart raced, but she kept her composure. "And why should I trust you?" The man's smile was faint. "Because we both know what happens if she wins." Sophia opened the envelope after he disappeared, revealing a list of names. At the top was her own. Laura's surveillance. From her vantage point in a warehouse overlooking the city, Laura monitored Radcliffe's operatives. One figure stood out, a courier making frequent trips between Radcliffe's safe houses. "She's moving something," Laura said into her comms. "I'll follow him and see where it leads." "Be careful," Anna's voice replied. "We can't afford to lose you." Laura trailed the courier through the city, her movements silent and deliberate. He led her to a nondescript building in a quiet neighborhood. As she watched from the shadows, she saw Radcliffe herself step out, her expression cold and calculating. Laura snapped photos, her pulse quickening. "I've got her, she's here." The confrontation, the wives gathered at the estate, their findings laid out on the table. Maria detailed Harrington's financial ties, Sophia revealed the list of names, and Laura presented her surveillance photos. "She's consolidating her power," Maria said, "but we've hit her where it hurts." Anna's gaze was sharp. "Then we need to keep pushing. Radcliffe won't stop unless we force her to." Sophia's voice was hesitant. "And the names? What do we do with them?" Anna picked up the list, her expression unreadable. "We use them. Every one of them is a thread we can pull." Radcliffe's counterstrike. In her office, Helen Radcliffe reviewed the reports of the wives' activities. Her expression was cold as she issued orders to her operatives. "They're getting too close," Radcliffe said. "Increase security on every operation, and remind our allies what happens to those who betray us." Her lieutenant hesitated. "And the wives?" Radcliffe's smile was chilling. "Let them think they're winning. It'll make their fall that much sweeter." The tipping point. As the night deepened, the wives prepared for their next moves. Trust was thin, and the weight of their decisions pressed heavily on each of them. Anna poured herself a glass of whiskey, her gaze distant. "We're close, but close isn't enough. We need to finish this." Maria raised her glass. "To the end." The others followed suit, their glasses clinking in a solemn vow. The battle lines were drawn, and the next strike would determine their fate. Chapter 19. Closing in. The night enveloped the city in a blanket of quiet anticipation. At Anna Petrov's estate, the tension was electric. The wives gathered once more in the study, the small black ledger at the center of the table like a ticking bomb. Each of them knew the importance of their next moves. One mistake could cost them everything. Anna stood at the head of the table, her eyes sharp as she addressed the group. "Radcliffe's network is reeling, but she's far from defeated. The ledger gave us the tools we need, but it's up to us to use them before she regains her footing." Maria Gonzalez nodded, her expression steely. "We've cut off her funding streams and disrupted her shipments, but we need to hit her operations directly. It's the only way to dismantle her completely." Sophia Rousseau's voice was softer, edged with doubt. "And what about the names on the list? If we're wrong about any of them, we risk alienating potential allies." Laura Williams leaned forward, her tone decisive. "We don't have the luxury of second-guessing. Radcliffe's people won't hesitate to take us down. We can't afford hesitation either." Anna's gaze swept the room, her voice unwavering. "Then it's settled. Tonight we act. Maria, target the safe house in the Northern District. Sophia, leverage your contacts to spread misinformation. Laura, follow Radcliffe's movements and ensure she doesn't outmaneuver us." Maria's offensive. The Northern District safe house was unassuming, its plain exterior masking the critical role it played in Radcliffe's operations. Maria approached it with a small team, their movements precise and silent. She signaled to her team, and they breached the door in unison. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of stale cigarettes and fear. Operatives scrambled to react, but Maria's team was faster. Within minutes, they had secured the building and its contents. Maria rifled through the documents they uncovered, her eyes narrowing as she found blueprints for another safe house. She immediately contacted Anna. "We've got the location of her main supply hub," Maria said. "If we hit it, we cripple her logistics completely." Sophia's maneuver. Sophia sat in a dimly lit cafe, her fingers curled around a cup of tea. Across from her was one of her key contacts, a journalist with a penchant for uncovering scandals. She slid a folder across the table, her voice calm but firm. "This is what you need to leak," Sophia said. "It'll make Radcliffe's allies question their loyalty. The more chaos we sow, the less control she'll have." The journalist hesitated, glancing through the folder. "If this backfires, it'll paint a target on both of us." Sophia's lips tightened. "She already has us in her sights. This is how we stay ahead." Laura's pursuit. From the shadows of a high-rise parking garage, Laura observed Radcliffe's convoy moving through the city. Her earpiece crackled with Anna's voice. "Stay on her," Anna said. "We need to know where she's heading." Laura followed the convoy at a safe distance, her movements precise. Radcliffe's convoy stopped at a heavily guarded warehouse. Laura captured photos and transmitted them to Anna. "She's consolidating here," Laura reported. "We'll need a coordinated strike to take it down." Radcliffe's reaction. Helen Radcliffe sat in her dimly lit office, her fingers drumming against the desk as she reviewed the latest reports. The wives were closing in, and their strikes had begun to disrupt her carefully laid plans. "Double security at all critical sites," Radcliffe ordered her lieutenant, "and find out who's feeding them information. No one is untouchable." Her lieutenant hesitated. "And if they come for you directly?" Radcliffe's smile was cold. "Let them try, I'll be ready." The turning point. By the time the wives regrouped at the estate, the weight of their actions was palpable. Maria's offensive had yielded critical intelligence. Sophia's misinformation campaign was already sowing discord, and Laura's surveillance had given them a clear target. Anna poured herself a glass of whiskey, her gaze sweeping the group. "We've forced her hand. Now we need to deliver the final blow." Maria raised her glass. "To the endgame." The others followed suit, their glasses clinking in a solemn vow. The final confrontation with Radcliffe loomed, and the outcome would determine not just their survival, but the fate of everything they had fought to protect. Chapter 20. Final Assault. The air was heavy with anticipation as Anna Petrov's estate buzzed with activity. The wives had gathered their resources, their network primed for what would be the decisive strike against Helen Radcliffe. The once fractured alliance now stood unified, their resolve unshakable. Every plan, every decision had led to this moment. Anna stood in the center of the study, her commanding presence undeniable. Around her, Maria Gonzalez, Sophia Russo, and Laura Williams prepared for the operation, each woman focused on her role in the final assault. "We've stripped her of her resources and severed her alliances," Anna said, her voice steady. "This ends tonight. Radcliffe has barricaded herself in her stronghold, but she won't expect what's coming." Maria nodded, her expression fierce. "The intel from the safe house gives us a clear layout. If we move fast, we can catch her off guard." Sophia's voice was quieter but resolute. "She's dangerous when cornered. We can't underestimate her." Laura checked her gear, her tone clipped. "We won't. Let's make sure this is the last move she ever makes." The stronghold. The convoy of black SUVs moved through the city under the cover of darkness, heading toward Radcliffe's fortified warehouse. The wives had coordinated with their remaining allies, assembling a small but formidable force to breach the stronghold. Each woman carried the weight of the mission, knowing failure was not an option. The warehouse loomed ahead, its perimeter guarded by Radcliffe's operatives. Maria coordinated the assault from a secure position, her voice calm over the comms. "Alpha Team, take the west entrance. Bravo, you're on the north. Move in on my signal." Inside the lead SUV, Anna sat beside Laura, her gaze focused. "We have to take her alive," Anna said. "If she dies tonight, we lose the chance to dismantle her network completely." Laura nodded, her grip tightening on her weapon. "Understood. But if it's her or us, I won't hesitate." The breach. The assault teams moved with precision, taking out Radcliffe's guards with silenced weapons and swift strikes. The crackle of radio chatter filled the air as the wives directed the operation from their positions. Sophia provided cover, her sniper rifle trained on the upper windows of the warehouse. She took a deep breath, her finger steady on the trigger. "2 guards on the east roof," she reported. "They're down." Inside, Anna and Laura led the charge through the labyrinthine corridors, their movements swift and deliberate. They encountered resistance, but years of experience had prepared them for this. Laura took point, her sharp instincts guiding them toward Radcliffe's inner sanctum. Radcliffe's last stand. In the heart of the warehouse, Helen Radcliffe stood behind a steel desk, her expression as cold as the weapon in her hand. She had anticipated the wives' arrival, but the ferocity of their assault had caught her off guard. Anna and Laura burst into the room, their weapons raised. Radcliffe's lips curled into a faint smile. "So the queens have come to claim their throne. How poetic." "Drop the gun, Helen," Anna said, her voice commanding. "It's over." Radcliffe's gaze flicked between them, calculating. "You think this ends with me? You've won nothing. My network is bigger than you can imagine. Cut me down, and another will rise." Laura's voice was ice. "Then we'll cut them down too. Now drop it." Radcliffe hesitated, then threw her weapon to the ground. Anna moved swiftly, securing her hands with zip ties. "You'll answer for everything you've done," Anna said, her tone unyielding. Radcliffe's laughter was chilling. "You think this is justice? You're no better than me, just more desperate." The aftermath. The operation ended as quickly as it began. Radcliffe's operatives were subdued, her stronghold secured. The wives regrouped outside the warehouse, the weight of their victory sinking in. Maria looked at the subdued Radcliffe, her expression unreadable. "What now? We've got her, but this isn't over." Anna's gaze was steely. "No, it's not, but we've won the first battle. The rest comes later." Sophia placed a hand on Maria's shoulder, her voice soft. "We'll rebuild. On our terms." Laura nodded, her voice resolute. We've taken back control. Now we make sure no one can take it from us again. A new beginning. As dawn broke over the city, the wives returned to the estate, their bond stronger than ever. The fight against Radcliffe had tested them in ways they could never have imagined, but they had emerged victorious. The ledger lay on the table, a reminder of the work still to be done. Anna poured a glass of whiskey, raising it in a silent toast. To survival, and to the future we'll build. Maria, Sophia, and Laura raised their glasses, their unity unspoken but undeniable. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time they faced it together, as queens reclaiming their power. Chapter 21. Reconstruction. The city felt quieter after the storm of their battle, as if it too was catching its breath. For Anna Petrov and the other wives, the aftermath of their victory over Helen Radcliffe was both a relief and a beginning. The power vacuum Radcliffe's fall created was a double-edged sword, an opportunity to rebuild, but also a challenge to maintain control. Inside Anna's estate, the wives gathered in the library. The scars of their fight were evident in their tired expressions, but their determination remained unbroken. The ledger, once a symbol of Radcliffe's dominance, now lay on the table as a tool of their reconstruction. Maria Gonzalez stood by the window, her arms crossed. Radcliffe's gone, but her allies aren't. We've cut the head off the snake, but the body's still writhing. Sophia Russo sat with her fingers intertwined, her voice measured. We have the ledger. It's our map to dismantling what's left of her network. If we're careful, we can neutralize the threats before they become problems. Laura Williams leaned against the wall, her gaze sharp. Careful isn't enough. We need to move fast, or someone else will step into the void she left. Anna nodded, her presence as commanding as ever. Then we move forward. Maria, you'll handle the financial assets we've seized. Sophia, continue using your contacts to monitor any power plays. Laura, I want every safe house and ally of Radcliffe's neutralized. This isn't just about cleaning up. It's about setting the rules moving forward. Maria's maneuvering. Maria spent her days buried in financial documents, tracing the flow of money that had sustained Radcliffe's empire. With every frozen account and seized asset, she redirected funds to strengthen their own infrastructure, security teams, legitimate businesses, and community projects that would ensure loyalty. She met with one of their trusted accountants, laying out her plans. We invest in visibility, community centers, scholarships, small businesses. We make sure the city sees us as benefactors, not just survivors. The accountant nodded, impressed by her vision. And the offshore accounts? Maria's eyes were sharp. We'll keep them. A hidden reserve for when the next storm comes. Sophia's outreach. Sophia returned to her gallery, but it was no longer just a sanctuary. It had become a hub for quiet negotiations and subtle diplomacy. She met with influencers, politicians, and even former associates of Radcliffe, carefully weaving a network that would support their growing influence. At one such meeting, a former ally of Radcliffe's approached her with trepidation. I didn't agree with everything she did, he admitted, but I stayed because I didn't have a choice. Sophia's smile was kind but firm. Now you do. Work with us, and you'll find your loyalty rewarded. Cross us, and you'll face the same fate she did. The man nodded, understanding the balance of power had shifted. Laura's neutralization. Laura operated in the shadows, systematically dismantling the remnants of Radcliffe's network. She led raids on hidden caches, exposed corrupt officials, and ensured that those who posed a threat were dealt with swiftly and decisively. One night, she confronted a lieutenant who had evaded their grasp during the warehouse raid. Pinning him against a wall in a deserted alley, she held a knife to his throat. Radcliffe's gone, Laura said coldly. But if you think you can fill her shoes, think again. You either disappear or you work for us. Choose now. The man trembling chose survival, Anna's vision. Anna oversaw it all, her mind always 5 steps ahead. She met with community leaders, legal advisors, and even media outlets to craft a narrative that positioned the wives as a force for good. They were no longer just survivors. They were architects of a new order. At a press event for a new community centre funded by their efforts, Anna spoke to a crowd. Her voice was strong, confident. "We've faced trials that could have broken us, but instead they forged us into something stronger. This city deserves better, and we're here to ensure it thrives." The applause was thunderous, a sign that their strategy was working. A quiet evening. For the first time in weeks, the wives gathered not to plan, but to reflect. They sat on Anna's terrace, the city lights twinkling in the distance. Glasses of wine in hand, they allowed themselves a rare moment of peace. Maria raised her glass. "To rebuilding, and to making sure no one ever takes what's ours again." Sophia smiled. "To the future we've earned." Laura nodded. "To strength." Anna's gaze swept over her allies, her voice soft but firm. "To queens who rule their own destiny." As their glasses clinked, the weight of their journey settled over them. They had survived the storm, but the work was far from over. Together they were ready to face whatever came next. Chapter 22. A New Dawn. The city had begun to heal in the wake of Radcliffe's downfall. The power vacuum she left behind could have plunged the streets into chaos, but under the careful stewardship of Anna Petrov and the other wives, order had not only been maintained but strengthened. Their rule was not marked by fear or violence, but by a calculated blend of power, strategy, and the promise of stability. The wives had transformed themselves from survivors to rulers, and tonight they gathered to celebrate the dawn of their new era. The gala. The grand ballroom of Anna's estate was unrecognizable, transformed into a glittering haven for the city's elite. Chandeliers bathed the room in golden light, and the air buzzed with the sound of laughter, clinking glasses, and whispered deals. The gala wasn't just a celebration, it was a declaration. The wives were no longer shadows on the fringes of power. They were its center. Anna stood at the top of the grand staircase, her gown a deep crimson that shimmered with every movement. She surveyed the crowd below, her sharp gaze taking in every face. Maria, Sophia, and Laura flanked her, each of them radiant and commanding in their own way. "Ladies," Anna said, her voice low but firm, "tonight we show them who we are, and we make sure they never forget it." Maria smirked. "Let them whisper. They'll know the truth soon enough." Sophia's smile was softer, her eyes scanning the crowd. "It's not just about us anymore. It's about everything we've built." Laura nodded, her tone edged with steel. "And everything we'll protect." Anna's speech. As the evening reached its peak, Anna descended the staircase, the room falling silent as she reached the podium. She paused, her gaze sweeping the audience, ensuring every eye was on her. "Ladies and gentlemen," Anna began, her voice carrying across the room, "tonight we celebrate not just our survival, but our resurgence. This city has endured turmoil, but it has also shown its strength. Together, we will build a future where resilience is rewarded, where stability is ensured, and where ambition is met with opportunity." The crowd erupted into applause, the energy in the room electric. Anna's lips curved into a faint smile. She had delivered the message she intended. The wives were here to stay. Private moments. As the gala continued, each of the wives found a moment to reflect amidst the celebration. Maria stood near a window, a glass of champagne in hand as she watched the city lights twinkle in the distance. A figure approached her, and she turned to see Roberto, her son, now grown and carrying himself with confidence. "Proud of yourself?" Roberto asked, his tone teasing but warm. Maria's smile softened. "Proud of us. This is as much for you as it is for me. For the future." Sophia lingered by a painting she had contributed to the gala, its bold colours reflecting her journey from fear to strength. A patron approached, offering compliments on her work, but Sophia's mind was elsewhere. She thought of Michael and the shadow he had cast over her life. Tonight, she had finally stepped out from under it. Laura moved through the crowd like a shadow, her sharp eyes catching every subtle interaction. She exchanged words with key allies, ensuring their loyalty and reminding them of the stakes. But as she stepped onto the balcony for a moment of quiet, she allowed herself a small smile. The battles had been hard, but the victory was worth it. A united front. By the end of the night, the wives regrouped in Anna's private lounge, away from the prying eyes of the guests. The camaraderie between them was evident, their bond forged in the fires of their shared struggle. Anna raised her glass, her voice steady. To us, to what we've built, and to what we'll protect. Maria, Sophia, and Laura raised their glasses, their voices echoing hers. To us. As their glasses clinked, the city stretched out before them, vast and full of possibilities. They had fought for their survival, reclaimed their power, and carved out their place in a world that had tried to destroy them. Now they faced the future, together and unyielding. Chapter 23, Shadows and Light. The celebration of the gala had barely faded when the realities of power began to resurface. The wives had solidified their position, but the ghosts of the past and the promises of the future still demanded their attention. It was a moment of reckoning, both personal and collective. Anna's reflection. The early morning light filtered through the grand windows of Anna's private study. She sat at her desk, her fingers steepled as she reviewed the reports from the night before. The gala had been a success, but it was only the beginning. Radcliffe's network had been dismantled, but its remnants still lingered in the city's underbelly. Lucia entered with a tray of coffee, her movements quiet and respectful. "Madam, you've been up all night. Perhaps some rest?" Anna shook her head. "Not yet. There's still too much to do." Lucia hesitated, then set the tray down. "Very well, but you've already proven yourself, to them and to everyone else." Anna's gaze softened for a moment before returning to the papers. "Proving myself isn't enough. I need to make sure it lasts." Maria's offer. Maria met with a group of local business leaders at an upscale cafe downtown. Her reputation as a shrewd but fair operator had spread quickly, and tonight she was approached by someone unexpected, a former associate of Radcliffe's. "You're Maria Gonzalez," the man said, his tone hesitant but intrigued. "You've been making waves. I'd like to propose a partnership." Maria's brow arched. "You're assuming I'd trust someone who used to work for Radcliffe." The man's smile was faint. "I didn't work for her by choice. She had a way of making loyalty mandatory. But I see an opportunity with you. You're building something real." Maria studied him for a long moment before offering a small nod. "I'll listen, but understand this. I'm not Radcliffe. Betray me, and there won't be a second chance." Sophia's turning point. Sophia wandered through her gallery late at night, the space quiet and dimly lit. The paintings on the walls seemed to watch her, each one a reflection of the journey she had taken. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You've done well, Sophia, but don't forget where you came from." Sophia's chest tightened as she stared at the words. She had spent so much time rebuilding her life, but the past had a way of creeping in. She turned her phone off and stood in front of one of her own paintings, its bold strokes and vibrant colours a reminder of her transformation. "I know exactly where I came from," she whispered to herself, "and I'm never going back." Laura's discovery. Laura sat in the surveillance room of their safe house, reviewing the latest intel from their operatives. Her sharp eyes scanned the reports, looking for anything that might threaten the fragile peace they had achieved. One file caught her attention, a new player in the city's underworld. The name was unfamiliar, but the methods were disturbingly similar to Radcliffe's. She picked up her phone and called Anna. "We have a problem. Someone stepping into Radcliffe's shoes. We need to act fast." Anna's voice was steady. "Find out everything you can. If they're a threat, we deal with them immediately." A midnight gathering. By midnight the wives convened in Anna's study, the weight of Laura's discovery pressing heavily on them. The file lay open on the table, its contents sparking concern. "If this new player gains traction, they'll undo everything we've worked for," Maria said, her tone sharp. Sophia's voice was calmer but firm. "Then we don't give them the chance. We cut them off before they can take root." Laura nodded. They're operating out of the South District, small but organized. If we strike now, we can dismantle them before they expand. Anna's gaze swept over her allies, her voice resolute. Then we move, no hesitation. We fought too hard to let this slip away. The wives raised their glasses, a silent toast to the battles ahead. The shadows of the past still lingered, but they faced the future with unyielding strength. Together, they would ensure their reign was unbreakable. Chapter 24. New Contenders. The quiet of the morning felt ominous, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Inside Anna Petrov's estate, the wives reconvened to address the latest threat, a shadowy new figure rising to fill the void left by Radcliffe. Their victory had been hard won, but their position was far from secure. Anna stood at the head of the table, the dossier Laura had uncovered spread out before her. Her eyes scanned the details, each new revelation deepening the lines of tension on her face. "This isn't just a rival," Anna said, her voice low but firm. "It's a test. They're seeing how far we're willing to go to protect what we've built." Maria Gonzalez leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed. "Then we show them, swift and decisive. If we let them gain any ground, it'll invite more challenges." Sophia Russo's voice was thoughtful. "But who are they? The dossier gives us methods, not identity. We need to know who we're up against before we act." Laura Williams' tone was clipped. "We don't have the luxury of time. They're already making moves in the South District. If we wait, they'll dig in." Anna's gaze swept over her allies. "Then we act. Laura, lead the reconnaissance. Maria, secure our allies in the district. Sophia, keep the city's influencers in line. If this new player wants a fight, we'll give them one." Maria's negotiations. Maria moved through the South District with practiced ease, meeting with local leaders who had long been loyal to the wives. In a quiet back room of a bustling cafe, she sat across from a community organizer named Elena Torres. "You've always supported us," Maria said, her tone warm but firm. "And we've always ensured your safety. But now there's a new threat. We need to know where you stand." Elena's brow furrowed. "People are scared. This new group, they're ruthless. Some are already siding with them out of fear." Maria's expression hardened. "Then we need to remind them who's really in control. Work with us, Elena, and we'll protect your community. But if they turn against us—" She let the silence hang, the implication clear. Elena nodded, her voice steady. "I'll make sure they remember." Sophia's strategy. Sophia hosted a gathering at her gallery, inviting key influencers and decision-makers under the guise of a cultural event. The wine flowed freely, and the atmosphere was light, but Sophia's conversations were anything but idle. She approached a young journalist, known for their investigative work. "I've heard whispers about the South District," Sophia said, her tone casual. "You might find some interesting stories there. Stories that could use a spotlight." The journalist's eyes narrowed. "You're suggesting something specific?" Sophia smiled faintly. "I'm suggesting that truth has power, and that it's always best to stay on the right side of it." Laura's reconnaissance. Laura moved through the South District under the cover of night, her sharp instincts guiding her through the labyrinth of streets and alleys. She followed the movements of the new group's operatives, her camera capturing every interaction. One figure stood out, a tall woman with a commanding presence, her face partially obscured by a hood. She directed the operatives with precision, her voice low but authoritative. Laura snapped photos and recorded the conversations, her heart pounding. She had seen enough to know that this wasn't just another rival. This was someone with the discipline and vision to pose a genuine threat. Anna's plan. Back at the estate, the wives regrouped to share their findings. Laura placed the photos on the table, her voice sharp as she detailed what she had uncovered. "They're organized, and they have a leader who knows what she's doing. This isn't a small-time operation." Maria added, "Our allies in the district are nervous, but they'll stay with us if we act quickly. We need to make an example of this group." Sophia's tone was measured. "We also need to control the narrative. If we act too aggressively, We risk looking like the villains. We need precision. Anna nodded, her gaze steady. Then we strike strategically. Laura, you'll lead the operation against their safe house. Maria, ensure our allies are ready to move. Sophia, keep the city's eyes on the bigger picture. We dismantle them piece by piece. The first strike. The operation began under the cover of darkness. Laura led a small team to the South District safe house, their movements swift and silent. Inside, they found weapons, cash, and documents that confirmed the group's plans to expand their operations. Maria coordinated with the local leaders, ensuring that the group's influence was immediately countered with a show of solidarity and strength. Sophia's connections in the media spun the narrative, portraying the wives as protectors of the city against a dangerous new threat. By dawn, the group's foothold in the South District had been shattered, their operatives scattered. A warning. As the wives regrouped at the estate, a message arrived, a single envelope left at the gate. Inside was a playing card, the Queen of Spades, with a note scrawled across it. You may have won this round, but the game has only just begun. Anna's lips pressed into a thin line as she handed the card to Laura. They want us to know they're still a threat. Laura's expression hardened. Then we make sure they never get another chance. The wives exchanged a look, their unity stronger than ever. The battle was far from over, but they were ready for whatever came next. Chapter 25. The Queen of Spades. The playing card had been a message, a bold declaration that the battle for the city was far from over. The wives knew it was more than a taunt. It was a challenge from a rival who understood the game they were playing. Inside Anna Petrov's estate, the atmosphere was thick with determination as they prepared for the next move. Anna's strategy. Anna sat at the head of the table, the Queen of Spades resting in front of her like a dare. Around her, Maria, Sophia, and Laura watched in silence as she outlined their plan. We don't wait for them to make the next move, Anna said, her voice steady. We find out who's leading this and cut them off before they can build any more momentum. Maria nodded, her arms crossed. I've been digging into the financial ties we uncovered at the safe house. There's a name that keeps coming up, Isadora Vance. She's a broker who deals in more than just money. Sophia's brow furrowed. I know that name. She used to frequent my gallery with Radcliffe. Always quiet, always watching. Laura leaned forward, her expression sharp. If she's the one behind this, we need to move fast. She's not just a broker, she's a strategist, and she's using our playbook. Anna's gaze hardened. Then we rewrite the rules. Maria's investigation. Maria spent hours combing through financial records, her focus unyielding. Isadora Vance's name was connected to a web of shell companies, each tied to known associates of Radcliffe. One transaction stood out, a large payment to a property in the Northern Industrial District. She called Anna. I found her base of operations, a warehouse off St. James Avenue. She's consolidating there. Anna's voice was calm but firm. Good work. We'll make our move tonight. Sophia's reconnections. Sophia reached out to a former patron who had once been close to Isadora. Their meeting took place in a quiet corner of a high-end cafe, the hum of conversation masking their words. Isadora's always been methodical, the patron said, their tone cautious. She doesn't take risks unless she's sure she can win. If she's targeting you, it's because she sees an opportunity. Sophia's voice was steady. And what about her weaknesses? Everyone has one. The patron hesitated, then leaned in closer. She doesn't trust anyone. She runs everything herself. If you want to take her down, you'll have to isolate her. Laura's surveillance. Laura scouted the warehouse under the cover of darkness, her movements silent and deliberate. From her vantage point on a nearby rooftop, she watched as shipments were unloaded, each crate marked with Isadora's insignia, a stylized black spade. She snapped photos and relayed her findings to Anna. She's running her operations out of here. Security's tight, but not impenetrable. Anna's response crackled through the comms. We strike at midnight. Be ready. The warehouse assault. The wives moved swiftly, their team executing the plan with precision. Maria coordinated the perimeter breach, her team neutralizing the guards with silent efficiency. Sophia provided cover, her sharp eye ensuring no operative escaped unnoticed. Inside, Anna and Laura led the charge, navigating the maze-like corridors until they reached the heart of the operation. There, amidst rows of crates, stood Isadora Vance, her presence as commanding as it was unnerving. "So the Queen's finally come to greet the spade," Isadora said, her voice smooth and mocking. "How predictable." Anna's gun remained steady in her hand. "This ends now, Isadora. You've lost." Isadora's smile didn't waver. "You think cutting me down will stop this? You've built your empire on the same foundation as mine. All it takes is one crack, and it all falls apart." Laura's voice was ice. "Then we'll make sure there are no cracks." The standoff ended in a flurry of movement. Isadora's operatives attempted to intervene, but the wives and their team were prepared. Within minutes the warehouse was secure, and Isadora was in custody. The aftermath. Back at the estate, the wives regrouped, the tension in the air finally easing. The black spade insignia was placed on the table alongside the Queen of Spades card, a symbol of their victory. Maria poured herself a glass of wine, her expression thoughtful. She was right about one thing. We can't afford any cracks. Not now. Sophia nodded, her voice quiet but firm. "Then we make sure there aren't any. We've come too far to let this slip away." Laura's gaze was sharp. "And we stay ready. Because if there's one Isadora, there's bound to be another." Anna lifted her glass, her voice steady. "To strength, to vigilance, and to ensuring our reign is unbreakable." As their glasses clinked, the city lay quiet outside, unaware of the battle that had just ended, and the queens who now ruled its shadows. Chapter 26. Reinforced Bonds. The victory over Isadora Vance had secured the wives' grip on the city, but the cost of their constant battles was beginning to weigh on them. Back at Anna Petrov's estate, the aftermath of the warehouse operation brought not just relief, but reflection. The wives gathered in the study, the tension between them lighter, but the stakes still present. Anna sat at the head of the table, the black spade insignia from Isadora's warehouse resting on the surface. She studied it with a measured gaze before speaking. "We've sent a message to anyone else who thinks they can challenge us, but this victory doesn't mean the end of our fight. It's just another step." Maria Gonzalez leaned back, her arms crossed. "Agreed. Isadora's network will scatter, but some of them will resurface. We need to keep the pressure on." Sophia Russo's voice was softer. "And not just externally. We've had cracks in our own foundation. If we don't address them, everything we've built could come undone." Laura Williams nodded, her tone practical. "We tighten our defenses, double our security, and we stay ahead of anyone who might try to step into Isadora's place." Anna's gaze swept over her allies, her voice steady. "Then we rebuild, not just our power but our trust. We've come too far to let anything divide us." Maria's outreach. Maria returned to the South District, her presence a reminder of the wives' commitment to the communities that supported them. She met with Elena Torres, the community leader who had helped them during their struggle against Isadora. "Your support was crucial," Maria said, her tone sincere. "We won't forget it." Elena's expression was cautious. "And what happens now? The people here are still nervous. They don't want more violence." Maria placed a hand on Elena's shoulder. "We're not here to rule by fear. We'll invest in this district, protect it, but we need the people to stand with us. Together we can ensure stability." Elena nodded slowly, a hint of hope in her eyes. "Then we'll stand with you." Sophia's redemption. Sophia spent her days in the gallery, pouring her energy into her art. The vibrant strokes on her newest canvas reflected not just her journey, but the strength she had found in her allies. One evening, as she prepared for a small exhibition, she was approached by the journalist she had tipped off about the South District. "Your intel helped expose Isadora's operations," the journalist said, "but there's still more to uncover. Are you willing to go further?" Sophia's smile was faint but determined. I'll share what I can, but remember, this isn't just about taking down the bad. It's about building something better. The journalist nodded, understanding the unspoken conditions. You've already started. Let's make sure it continues. Laura's vigilance. Laura's instincts had always been her greatest asset, and now they were sharper than ever. She expanded their surveillance network, ensuring that any threats to their stability were identified before they could take root. Late one night, as she reviewed the latest intel, a report caught her attention. A new player was circulating among the remnants of Isadora's network, someone with resources and ambition. She immediately called Anna. We've got a potential threat, Laura said. No moves yet, but they're consolidating. If we act now, we can stop them before they gain momentum. Anna's voice was calm. Keep tracking them. We'll meet tomorrow to plan our response. A quiet evening. For the first time in weeks, the wives gathered on Anna's terrace to enjoy a rare moment of peace. The city lights sparkled in the distance, a reminder of everything they had fought for. Maria raised her glass, to resilience, and to proving that nothing can break us. Sophia smiled softly, to rebuilding stronger than before. Laura's tone was steady, to staying vigilant. Anna's gaze swept over her allies, her voice firm, to unity, and to ensuring that we always stand together. Their glasses clinked, the sound carrying into the night. They had faced every challenge with strength and determination, and now they were ready to face whatever came next, together, as a force no one could overcome. Chapter 27. Unseen Tides. The dawn brought a rare moment of quiet to Anna Petrov's estate, but the serenity was deceptive. Beneath the surface, forces were moving, and the wives could feel the shifting currents. They had solidified their power, but the city was vast, and unseen tides threatened to disrupt their hard-won stability. Anna's morning. Anna stood on the balcony of her study, her eyes scanning the city skyline. The weight of leadership rested heavily on her shoulders, but she bore it with the poise of someone who had long learned to mask her burdens. Her phone buzzed on the desk behind her. It was a message from Laura. Update. New player confirmed. High-level backer. Meeting at the Regency Hotel tonight. Will surveil. Anna's jaw tightened. She typed a quick response. Good work. Proceed with caution. Convene afterward. She turned back to the city, her thoughts already racing. Another challenge was rising, and she needed to be ready. Maria's discovery. Maria worked tirelessly in her office, her monitors glowing with data from their surveillance network. She was tracing financial transactions tied to the new player, a shadowy figure who had begun recruiting from the remnants of Isadora Vance's network. One account caught her attention, a series of large transfers routed through offshore banks and funneled into an upscale property development in the heart of the city. She called Anna. The Regency Hotel isn't just a meeting spot, it's a front. They're using it to launder money and stage their operations. Anna's voice was calm but firm. Then it's our next target. Keep digging. I want every detail. Sophia's alliance. Sophia met with a prominent socialite at her gallery, her charm and diplomacy on full display. The woman had connections to the city's elite and could provide valuable intel on the new player's influence. The Regency has always been a hub for power plays, the socialite said, sipping her wine. But lately it's been different, more guarded, more purposeful. Sophia's smile was faint but encouraging. Any idea who's behind it? The woman hesitated, then leaned in closer. A name has been whispered, Dorian Lasker. He's ambitious, ruthless, and very well connected. Sophia's heart quickened. Thank you. This helps more than you know. Laura's surveillance. Laura parked her car a block away from the Regency Hotel, her sharp eyes scanning the building through her binoculars. She noted the increased security, the comings and goings of sharply dressed individuals, and the subtle but unmistakable signs of a high-level operation. Her earpiece crackled with Maria's voice. We've confirmed Dorian Lasker's presence. He's hosting a private meeting in the penthouse. No one gets in without clearance. Laura smirked. Good thing I'm not waiting for an invitation. Slipping into the building through a service entrance, Laura made her way to the upper floors. She positioned herself near the penthouse, her recording device ready to capture anything useful. The penthouse meeting. Dorian Lasker stood at the head of a long table in the luxurious penthouse, his confidence palpable. Around him sat key figures from the city's underworld, each one hanging on his every word. Radcliffe's fall created an opportunity, Dorian said, his voice smooth and commanding. The city needs order, stability, and I intend to provide it. But first, we deal with the queens who think they own this city. Laura's breath hitched as she listened, her fingers tightening on her recorder. She slipped away before the meeting concluded, her mind already racing with the implications. The wives' response. By midnight the wives convened at Anna's estate, their findings laid out before them. Maria's financial leads, Sophia's intel, and Laura's recording painted a clear picture. Dorian Lasker was no mere opportunist. He was a strategist, and his sights were set on their empire. "He's planning to move against us," Laura said, her tone urgent. "He sees himself as the city's savior, but he's no different than Radcliffe." Maria's expression was sharp. "Then we hit him before he can act. Take out his operations, expose his connections, and make sure no one sides with him." Sophia's voice was calmer but resolute. "We also control the narrative. If we turn public opinion against him, his alliances will crumble." Anna nodded, her gaze steady. "Then it's settled. We dismantle him piece by piece. This city is ours, and we'll make sure it stays that way." The first move. The wives launched their operation with precision. Maria froze the accounts tied to the Regency's operations, cutting off Lasker's funding. Sophia used her connections to spread rumors of dissent among his allies, planting seeds of doubt. Laura coordinated a raid on one of his safe houses, recovering documents that further exposed his network. By dawn the tides had shifted again. Lasker's power was no longer unseen, it was unraveling, a message delivered. As the sun rose, a courier arrived at the Regency Hotel, delivering a single envelope to Dorian Lasker. Inside was a playing card, the Queen of Hearts, with a note scrawled in bold handwriting. "This city bows to queens, not pretenders." The wives' oath. Back at the estate, the wives shared a quiet moment of triumph. Anna raised her glass, her voice steady. "To seeing every challenge before it arrives, to ruling without fear, and to ensuring no one forgets who holds the power in this city." Maria, Sophia, and Laura raised their glasses, their unity unshaken. Together, they faced the future, knowing that as long as they stood together, no unseen tide could overturn their reign. Chapter 28. Breaking Chains. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting the city in a wash of muted colors. Anna Petrov's estate buzzed with quiet activity as the wives prepared for their next move. Dorian Lasker's ambitions were unraveling, but the final strike would require precision and resolve. They had drawn him into the open. Now they would ensure he could never rise again. Anna's command. Anna stood at the head of the table in the study, her gaze sharp as she addressed the group. "Lasker is desperate. He'll make bold moves to regain his footing, and that makes him dangerous. We need to neutralize him now." Maria Gonzalez leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "His remaining network is spread thin, but he's holding on to the Regency Hotel like it's his fortress. If we take it, he's finished." Sophia Russo's voice was measured. "But a frontal assault will draw too much attention. We need subtlety, precision." Laura Williams nodded. "I've been watching his patterns. He's using the hotel to host meetings and store sensitive intel. We get in, extract the information, and take him down from the inside." Anna's gaze swept over her allies, her tone resolute. "Then we move tonight. No mistakes." Maria's disruption. Maria took point on disrupting Lasker's remaining financial lifelines. Through a series of calculated maneuvers, she froze accounts and exposed his shell companies, leaving him scrambling to cover his losses. At a private banking office, Maria met with an old contact who had ties to Lasker's network. "You're playing a dangerous game," the contact said, his voice low. Maria's smile was razor-sharp. "I've never been afraid of risk. If you're smart, you'll make sure this ends on the right side." Her confidence was infectious. By the end of the meeting, the contact agreed to cut ties with Lasker and cooperate with the wives' plans. Sophia's disguise. Sophia entered the Regency Hotel under the guise of an art consultant, her understated elegance allowing her to blend seamlessly with the high-end clientele. She carried a portfolio of forged appraisals, a cover story designed to gain her access to the upper floors, where Lasker's operations were concentrated. As she moved through the lobby, she spotted one of Lasker's key operatives. Her breath steadied as she approached him, her voice smooth. "Excuse me, I'm here for the penthouse exhibition. Could you point me in the right direction?" The operative hesitated, but eventually nodded toward the elevator. "Top floor. You'll need clearance at the desk." Sophia's lips curved into a polite smile. "Thank you." Laura's infiltration. While Sophia worked her charm, Laura slipped into the hotel through the service entrance. She navigated the narrow corridors with practiced stealth, her target clear. Lasker's private office. Inside she found a treasure trove of documents, laptops, and encrypted drives. Laura worked quickly, copying files and planting devices that would allow them to monitor Lasker's communications remotely. Her earpiece crackled with Anna's voice. "Status?" "I'm in," Laura replied. "This is everything we need to finish him." The confrontation. As Laura exited the office, she encountered Lasker himself. He stood at the end of the corridor, his expression a mix of surprise and fury. "I should have known you wouldn't stay out of this," Lasker said, his voice cold. Laura's hand hovered near her weapon. "Your mistake was thinking you could take what's ours." Lasker smirked. "You can't stop progress. This city will always need someone like me." Laura's tone was ice. "Not this time." Before Lasker could react, Maria and Sophia appeared from the elevator, flanking him. The sight of the three women together was enough to make him falter. Anna's voice crackled through the comms. "Bring him in." The fall of Lasker. Back at the estate, Lasker sat bound to a chair in the study, his arrogance giving way to unease as Anna stepped into the room. She circled him slowly, her expression unreadable. "You thought you could challenge us," Anna said, her voice low and sharp. "You thought you could divide us, but you've only made us stronger." Lasker's jaw tightened. "You can't control everything. Sooner or later, someone will rise to take your place." Anna leaned in, her voice a whisper. "Let them try." A united front. With Lasker neutralized, the wives took a rare moment to reflect. They gathered on Anna's terrace, the city sprawling before them as they shared a quiet toast. Maria raised her glass. "To cutting every chain that tries to bind us." Sophia smiled. "To proving we're stronger together." Laura's tone was steady. "To ensuring no one underestimates us again." Anna's gaze swept over her allies, her voice firm. "To queens who rule unchallenged." Their glasses clinked, the sound echoing into the night. The battle had been won, but the war for the city's future was far from over. Together they would face whatever came next, unyielding and united. Chapter 29. Foundations and Futures. The city breathed easier with Dorian Lasker gone. His fall had sent a ripple through the power structures that had once sought to dominate, and in its wake the wives solidified their control. But as the dust settled, the question of what came next lingered over Anna Petrov's estate, like a ghost. A meeting of queens. Anna called the wives together in the study, the table before them no longer covered in schematics and intel, but blueprints for new ventures. The Queen of Spades card sat to the side, a reminder of their victories and the cost of vigilance. "We've proven we can hold this city," Anna began, her voice steady. "But control isn't enough. We need to build something that lasts, a foundation they can't shake." Maria Gonzalez nodded, her expression thoughtful. "We've strengthened our alliances and neutralized threats, but we need permanence, investments, infrastructure, something that says we're not just here, but we're here to stay." Sophia Russo's voice was softer, tinged with reflection. "And it can't just be about power. If we're going to lead, we need to leave more than just fear behind." Laura Williams leaned back in her chair, her gaze sharp. Then let's start laying the bricks. Identify the gaps, the risks, and the opportunities. We've spent so long reacting. It's time to dictate the game. Anna's lips curved into a faint smile. Then let's get to work. Maria's projects. Maria dove headfirst into development plans for the South District, focusing on revitalization efforts that would benefit both the community and their network. She worked with architects and local leaders to design projects that would cement their influence while providing real value. At a meeting with the city's planning board, Maria made her pitch. This isn't just an investment, it's a commitment to growth, stability, and opportunity for everyone in this city. The board members exchanged glances, their resistance softened by her conviction. By the end of the session, the plans were approved, and Maria had secured the first step in their long-term strategy. Sophia's gallery. Sophia expanded her gallery into a cultural hub, hosting events that brought together artists, influencers, and policymakers. Her vision was clear: to position the wives as not just power brokers, but champions of the city's creative and intellectual spirit. At one such event, a prominent journalist approached her, their tone curious. "Your gallery has become a centerpiece for the city's future. Was that always your intention?" Sophia smiled, her voice calm. "My intention was to create something that inspires. If that inspires change, then I consider it a success." The journalist nodded, scribbling notes. "And do you think change can last?" Sophia's gaze was unwavering. "It has to. Otherwise, what are we fighting for?" Laura's vigilance. Laura remained the eyes and ears of the operation, her vigilance ensuring that no threat went unnoticed. She expanded their surveillance network, embedding operatives in key positions across the city. Late one night, she received intel about a former ally of Radcliffe's attempting to regroup. Laura acted swiftly, coordinating with their security team to intercept the threat before it gained traction. "We can't rest on our laurels," Laura said during a debrief with Anna. "Every step we take forward, we need to keep an eye on who might try to pull us back." Anna nodded, her expression serious. "And we will, together." A vision for the future. As the months passed, the wives' efforts began to bear fruit. The city transformed under their guidance, its streets safer, its opportunities more abundant. Public opinion shifted, and whispers of their past gave way to a narrative of progress. One evening, they gathered on Anna's terrace, the city's lights stretching out before them. The table was adorned not with weapons or plans, but with wine glasses and quiet laughter. Maria raised her glass. "To everything we've built, and to everything we'll protect." Sophia smiled softly. "To leaving a legacy." Laura's voice was steady. "To staying ahead." Anna's gaze swept over her allies, her voice strong and sure. "To queens who rule with purpose." As their glasses clinked, the sound carried into the night, a promise to themselves and to the city they had reclaimed. They had faced every challenge, and now they stood poised to shape the future on their own terms. Chapter 30. The Unbreakable Chain. The city was quiet under the silver glow of the moon, its streets a testament to the wives' work. They had rebuilt more than just their power. They had forged an empire rooted in resilience, unity, and purpose. But with the dawn of their triumph came the realization that their greatest challenge was ensuring it would endure. Anna's legacy. Anna Petrov sat in her private study, the soft light of the desk lamp illuminating the papers before her. They were plans for a new initiative, a foundation dedicated to providing opportunities for the city's underserved communities. It was a project born of strategy, but also of conviction. Lucia entered with a tray of tea, her presence as steady as always. "Madam, you've been working for hours. Perhaps a break?" Anna smiled faintly. "I'll rest when this is done. This foundation isn't just about the city. It's about the future. If we don't invest in it now, we'll only have to fight for it later." Lucia hesitated, then set the tray down. "You're building something that will outlast all of us. That's worth every effort." Maria's guardianship. Maria Gonzalez walked through the bustling marketplace in the South District, her presence a reassuring force. The revitalization projects she had spearheaded were flourishing, and the community saw her as both protector and benefactor. She stopped to speak with Elena Torres, the community leader who had been instrumental in their early efforts. "The people trust you, Maria," Elena said. "They know you'll keep your promises." Maria's smile was warm but firm. "Trust is earned every day. We've come this far because we've worked together, and we're not stopping now." Sophia's influence. Sophia Russo's gallery had become more than an art space. It was a cultural cornerstone. Tonight, it hosted an exhibition featuring young local artists whose work reflected the city's transformation. As she mingled with the crowd, a young artist approached her, their voice filled with gratitude. "Miss Russo, this opportunity has changed my life. Thank you for believing in us." Sophia's smile was genuine. "Believing in people is how we all grow. Keep creating, and you'll inspire others to do the same." Laura's watch. Laura Williams stood on the rooftop of a high-rise, the city sprawling beneath her. Her surveillance network had grown into a near-omniscient web, ensuring that no threat went unnoticed. Her earpiece buzzed with a report from one of her operatives. No signs of activity from the usual suspects. The city's quiet. Laura smirked. "Good, let's keep it that way." She leaned against the railing, her gaze unwavering. The peace they had secured was fragile, but she was determined to protect it at all costs. A united front. The wives gathered one last time on Anna's terrace, the city lights stretching out before them. The air was filled with a sense of accomplishment, but also the weight of responsibility. They had reclaimed their city, but their work was far from over. Maria raised her glass, her tone steady. "To what we've built, and to ensuring it lasts." Sophia's smile was soft but resolute. "To inspiring others to believe in something greater." Laura's voice was sharp and sure. "To staying vigilant no matter what." Anna's gaze swept over her allies, her voice firm but warm. "To us, the unbreakable chain that keeps this city strong." Their glasses clinked, the sound resonating like a promise. Together they had faced every challenge and emerged stronger. The city was theirs, not as rulers of fear, but as architects of hope and resilience. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it united, their bond unyielding and their legacy secure. Chapter 31. New Frontiers. The city had entered a new chapter under the quiet yet firm reign of Anna Petrov and her allies. Their empire was built on more than power, it was built on vision, but as the wives gathered to chart the next phase of their journey, they understood that maintaining their success would demand constant evolution. Anna's ambition. In her study, Anna Petrov pored over a map of the city, her gaze drawn to the unclaimed districts on its edges. These areas had long been neglected, written off as too chaotic to tame. For Anna, they represented opportunity. Lucia entered quietly, a fresh pot of coffee in hand. "The others have arrived, madam. Shall I bring them in?" Anna nodded, her focus unwavering. "Yes, it's time we expanded our horizons." The gathering. Maria, Sophia, and Laura joined Anna in the study, the map spread out before them. Each woman carried the weight of her responsibilities, but their bond remained strong. Maria tapped one of the unclaimed districts. "This area has potential. It's untapped, but we'll need to handle it carefully. The people there don't trust outsiders." Sophia studied the map, her brow furrowing. "Then we don't go in as outsiders. We integrate. Art, culture, education. We give them a reason to welcome us." Laura leaned back, her tone measured. "That's all well and good, but we need to ensure security first. If we expand too quickly, we risk overextending." Anna listened to each perspective, her mind already forming a plan. "Then we do it in phases. Maria, focus on building alliances. Sophia, spearhead cultural initiatives. Laura, ensure our defenses are unbreakable. Together, we'll make this work." Maria's diplomacy. Maria met with local leaders in the unclaimed district, her charm and practicality on full display. She spoke of mutual growth and shared prosperity, her words carefully chosen to resonate. One leader, a wary man named Javier, folded his arms. "Why should we trust you? You've already got half the city. What do you want with us?" Maria's smile was calm. "Because we believe in building something better, and because we're willing to earn your trust. Let us prove it." Her sincerity softened the room, and by the end of the meeting, Javier agreed to consider her proposal. Sophia's outreach. Sophia transformed a vacant warehouse in the district into a pop-up gallery, showcasing local artists alongside established names. The event drew crowds, sparking conversations and creating connections. At the opening, a young artist approached her, their excitement palpable. "Thank you for this opportunity. It means everything to us." Sophia's smile was genuine. "It's just the beginning. Your voice matters here, and we're here to amplify it." Laura's vigilance. Laura coordinated with her operatives to establish a discreet but effective security presence in the district. She identified potential threats and neutralized them before they could gain traction. During a late-night patrol, she intercepted a group attempting to sabotage the wives' efforts. Her presence alone was enough to scatter them, but she took note of their allegiances and ensured they wouldn't pose a future risk. "They're testing us," Laura reported to Anna, "but they'll find we're not easy to shake." Anna nodded. "Good, let's make sure they don't forget it." A vision realized. Weeks later, the district began to transform. Streets once neglected now bustled with life, and the wives' presence was seen not as an intrusion, but as a partnership. Trust was fragile, but it was growing. The wives gathered on a rooftop overlooking the district, the glow of new opportunities lighting the streets below. Each woman carried a sense of accomplishment, but also the understanding that their work was far from done. Maria raised her glass, to expansion, and to proving we can build without breaking. Sophia's smile was soft, to showing what's possible when vision meets action. Laura's tone was steady, to staying one step ahead. Anna's gaze swept over her allies, her voice confident, to new frontiers, and to ensuring they're ours. Their glasses clinked, the sound carrying into the night. They had ventured into the unknown and emerged stronger, ready to face whatever challenges awaited beyond the horizon. Chapter 31. New Frontiers. The city had entered a new chapter under the quiet yet firm reign of Anna Petrov and her allies. Their empire was built on more than power. It was built on vision. But as the wives gathered to chart the next phase of their journey, they understood that maintaining their success would demand constant evolution. Anna's ambition. In her study, Anna Petrov pored over a map of the city, her gaze drawn to the unclaimed districts on its edges. These areas had long been neglected, written off as too chaotic to tame. For Anna, they represented opportunity. Lucia entered quietly, a fresh pot of coffee in hand. "The others have arrived, madam. Shall I bring them in?" Anna nodded, her focus unwavering. "Yes, it's time we expanded our horizons." The gathering. Maria, Sophia, and Laura joined Anna in the study, the map spread out before them. Each woman carried the weight of her responsibilities, but their bond remained strong. Maria tapped one of the unclaimed districts. "This area has potential. It's untapped, but we'll need to handle it carefully. The people there don't trust outsiders." Sophia studied the map, her brow furrowing. "Then we don't go in as outsiders. We integrate. Art, culture, education. We give them a reason to welcome us." Laura leaned back, her tone measured. "That's all well and good, but we need to ensure security first. If we expand too quickly, we risk overextending." Anna listened to each perspective, her mind already forming a plan. "Then we do it in phases, Maria. Focus on building alliances. Sophia, spearhead cultural initiatives. Laura, ensure our defenses are unbreakable. Together, we'll make this work." Maria's diplomacy. Maria met with local leaders in the unclaimed district, her charm and practicality on full display. She spoke of mutual growth and shared prosperity, her words carefully chosen to resonate. One leader, a wary man named Javier, folded his arms. Why should we trust you? You've already got half the city. What do you want with us? Maria's smile was calm. Because we believe in building something better, and because we're willing to earn your trust. Let us prove it. Her sincerity softened the room, and by the end of the meeting, Javier agreed to consider her proposal. Sophia's outreach. Sophia transformed a vacant warehouse in the district into a pop-up gallery, showcasing local artists alongside established names. The event drew crowds, sparking conversations and creating connections. At the opening, a young artist approached her, their excitement palpable. "Thank you for this opportunity. It means everything to us." Sophia's smile was genuine. "It's just the beginning. Your voice matters here, and we're here to amplify it." Laura's vigilance. Laura coordinated with her operatives to establish a discreet but effective security presence in the district. She identified potential threats and neutralized them before they could gain traction. During a late-night patrol, she intercepted a group attempting to sabotage the wives' efforts. Her presence alone was enough to scatter them, but she took note of their allegiances and ensured they wouldn't pose a future risk. "They're testing us," Laura reported to Anna, "but they'll find we're not easy to shake." Anna nodded. "Good, let's make sure they don't forget it." A vision realized. Weeks later, the district began to transform. Streets once neglected now bustled with life, and the wives' presence was seen not as an intrusion, but as a partnership. Trust was fragile, but it was growing. The wives gathered on a rooftop overlooking the district, the glow of new opportunities lighting the streets below. Each woman carried a sense of accomplishment, but also the understanding that their work was far from done. Maria raised her glass. "To expansion, and to proving we can build without breaking." Sophia's smile was soft. "To showing what's possible when vision meets action." Laura's tone was steady. "To staying one step ahead." Anna's gaze swept over her allies, her voice confident. "To new frontiers, and to ensuring they're ours." Their glasses clinked, the sound carrying into the night. They had ventured into the unknown and emerged stronger, ready to face whatever challenges awaited beyond the horizon. Chapter 32. The Long Game. The city glimmered under the starlit sky, a testament to the vision and resilience of Anna Petrov and her allies. Their influence stretched farther than ever, but with power came the constant threat of opposition. Tonight, as the wives gathered at the estate, they prepared for the next chapter in their journey, fortifying their legacy for generations to come. Anna's proposition. In the grand study, Anna Petrov stood before a projection screen displaying a map of the city. Red and blue markers indicated their strongholds and the remaining areas of interest. She turned to face Maria, Sophia, and Laura, her expression resolute. "We've achieved more than I ever imagined," Anna began, her voice calm but commanding. "But power is fleeting if it isn't institutionalized. It's time we shift from dominance to permanence." Maria Gonzalez raised an eyebrow. "And how do we make that shift? We're not politicians or philanthropists." Anna's lips curved into a faint smile. "No, but we're strategists. We create frameworks that outlast us. Maria, you'll spearhead economic reforms. Sophia, you'll expand our cultural initiatives. Laura, you'll ensure our security evolves to meet new challenges." Sophia's gaze was thoughtful. "And you?" "I'll lead the integration," Anna replied. "We don't just want to be remembered. We want to become indispensable." Maria's economic blueprint. Maria worked tirelessly with a team of advisors, crafting an economic plan that focused on sustainability and inclusivity. She organized a forum with business leaders and investors, presenting her vision for a city where prosperity was shared. "We've seen what happens when power is hoarded," Maria said during her presentation. "It's unstable, short-lived. True strength comes from collaboration and reinvestment. Let's build something that lasts." The room erupted in applause, and Maria knew she had secured their support. Sophia's cultural expansion. Sophia's gallery evolved into a foundation that supported emerging artists, funded public art installations, and organized workshops in underserved communities. Her work earned her recognition as a cultural leader, but for Sophia, it was about more than accolades. At the unveiling of a new mural in the South District, a young artist approached her with tears in their eyes. "You've given us a voice. Thank you." Sophia placed a hand on their shoulder, her smile warm. "Your voice was always there. I just helped amplify it." Laura's security innovations. Laura's efforts focused on creating a security network that combined technology with human intelligence. She partnered with experts to develop a system of predictive analytics, ensuring that threats could be identified and neutralized before they materialized. During a demonstration for Anna and the others, Laura outlined the system's capabilities. "This isn't just about reacting to threats, it's about staying 3 steps ahead. With this, we control the board." Anna nodded, her approval evident. "It's brilliant, and exactly what we need. A new pact." As the initiatives took shape, the wives gathered on Anna's terrace, the city spread out before them like a living testament to their efforts. Each woman carried the weight of their journey, but also the pride of what they had achieved. Maria raised her glass. "To the foundation we've laid, may it stand the test of time." Sophia's smile was serene. "To inspiring those who come after us to dream bigger." Laura's voice was steady. "To protecting everything we've built, no matter the cost." Anna's gaze swept over her allies, her voice filled with conviction. "To the long game, and to ensuring that the queens who built this empire are never forgotten." Their glasses clinked, the sound resonating like a promise. They had turned their trials into triumphs, their ambitions into realities. As the city lights sparkled around them, they knew they weren't just building an empire, they were shaping a legacy.